Okay. It says it's streaming. I'm going to see how long the latency. Okay, it's working. It's working.
Excellent.
What's the audio like? Okay. It says it's streaming. Yeah. Audio's fine.
Flawless. Excellent.
Okay, I'll just quickly tweet out the link. And
Handy to tweet it, actually, because I can't find the stream myself.
and then there we go. Boom. And
Right.
there we go.
Yay. There we are. Right. Once I've... Video unavailable. This video is private.
Is it private? Oh no.
It's
What
what
have
it's
I done?
for me.
Oh no, what have I done? Oh, it's still private. I've got to change that. Oh,
Easily done, Dave. Don't worry.
edit video. Where I thought I'd put it on. There we go. Visibility public. There we go. Boom.
Yeah.
Save.
So now... Any
Okay.
second now.
Technical difficulties aside.
Yay.
What's up, world?
Okay, it's working, is it? Okay, good.
Fabulous.
Awesome. Finally. Oh, it's still private.
Excellent.
Okay, works now. Works now. Okay.
It certainly does.
I haven't streamed in like years, so that's my excuse.
It's a good excuse.
I've been outside going too much, too much grass being touched.
It's one way of putting it.
But yeah, actually, okay, so we started this discussion because we wanted to chat about the whole incel thing, wasn't it?
It was indeed.
Yes.
I saw a tweet you made,
Yes.
which I can put up in a second, actually.
If
And I thought it, while it was a perspective on the situation with incels. I mean, I'm not really a fan of the word incel, but yeah, it's the cultural sort of one that's been picked. So I guess that's the one that sticks.
It's the one that they adopted.
That's why I don't really like it, to be honest. I feel as though it's one that needs to. It's not like when you use the term, you've got to be clear what you're talking about and like where you're coming from.
Absolutely, because like there's about 15 to 20 different meanings depending on who you're talking to.
But also, like I don't agree with what they say about themselves or about like society and stuff. So I think it's quite important to make sure that you're coming from a point where, whilst you might be using their word, you aren't necessarily sharing and agreeing with their argument. If that makes sense.
Yes. No. I entirely agree. This is, I think, the main the main issue is that it's very difficult to it can be quite hard to talk about this because the term means so much to so many different people, and then on top of that, it's got this sort of inherent like premise that a lot of people don't like to accept, and there's a good reason for that. Is because it's kind of a dodgy premise. So it's very difficult to discuss these communities because there isn't really a label for them that works. So I think I tend to use the term self-identified incel because I think that is a helpful term. People know what you mean by that because someone who calls himself an incel, at least like they're identifying as one, and you use the word self-identified, then you know where you're going with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, to a degree. I mean, I see where you're coming from. Though you might feel me a little bit harsh with this, but I tend to be more blunt and call them just misogynists or bigot seems a bit generic. But I feel as though if you have a point where you're in these places, like involuntarily celibate, and you're coming up with these names, and you're in these communities, and you're festering in some pretty like outwardly unpleasant views towards the people that they have idealized and they sort of center themselves around. you're sort of you're positioning yourself in a way which doesn't position yourself favorably, if that makes sense. Like
Oh,
you're not really
I I would
presenting
agree.
yourself in a very good way.
I would agree. In the sense that yes, these communities are misogynistic, but I do think that they are caused by different factors to sort of standard misogyny. In the sense that these communities are built from a very different crop of men than you would normally find, say, voting in a parliament against abortion. There's different kinds of misogyny, and there's different kinds of ways that it manifests. And so I do think a term to differentiate these kinds of very specific communities is worthwhile. I just don't know if... I would agree that incel probably isn't, like, the best way to describe them, but it's the way they describe themselves. So, like...
Indeed. It's a shorthand, isn't it? It's in the same way that people called themselves alt-right. And that's their label, and it's handy to talk about them if that's what they talk about themselves.
Yeah.
But so long as you keep sight of the fact that they're still, they're still like part of fascism, they're still part of the far right.
I mean, reactionary fascism. Yeah, reactionary fascism is kind of like, it's kind of like the OG right wing, if anything else. It's sort of like the original sort of standard right wing, and then sort of more modern liberal conservatism is kind of like a diet version of that. So yeah, calling themselves alt-right isn't like perfect. So it's similar in that sense. That
to a degree,
like, yeah. I think this term has been reified so much because of discourse, and I find the term is very useful as like a weapon to shout certain people down with as well, which makes things a lot more difficult.
I mean, I feel as though that's true of lots of words, especially in politics.
No, for sure.
But my original point is that while using incel as a word, as a term in this sort of discussion, it's useful in that it gets everyone sort of knowing what you're talking about and who you're talking about. But it's important to recognize that in the same way that the alt-right will come up with different words for themselves, sometimes I feel as though the word incel distracts from the fact that these people are at core still quite misogynistic, sexist people that often, for all their flaws and all their reasoning, they still use a subset of arguments which are still like rooted in quite backwards ideas. In the same way that someone like Richard Spencer, for instance, for all his different flavors of like what he's saying, he still was using like fascist arguments. It's a minor point, and it is sort of depends on sort of your own terminology and how you interact with language. But I still think I still feel I'd like to say it because like in the Twitter things I was posting earlier, I was putting incel in quotation marks quite a lot.
Okay, yeah.
And it's just because obviously it's a term and it's got its meaning and we know what we're talking about in terms of like who we're referring to, but I just don't really like it as a term.
So I think from this point forward, we should probably. I think this is a fair conversation to have, and I think we've gotten to a point here where we don't like the premise because it's not necessarily the greatest of premises. Did you know the term incel actually was coined by a woman?
I wasn't aware of that. No.
It was actually coined by a lesbian woman who struggled to have relationships, and that was actually where the term originally was coined, and it was women who were talking about it originally, and then a couple of men found it and adopted it, and then it spiraled out of control from there. But yeah, like so, I think I have a very different understanding of these communities because I have at one point been I was a moderator of a small sort of support group for incels who wanted to sort of leave the community. They wanted to actually like move away and improve their lives and improve themselves and stuff. And I find that maybe this has given me like a way to sympathetic perspective on it, because this was obviously a bit of selection bias that they were all trying to be better in that sense. So but I don't necessarily think that the things that led those types of people into those communities is any different. and I think that the insecurities and the just the factors that cause that sort of ideology and that sort of attitude are really as like I don't think they're as nefarious. I think they're caused by certain problems with the way that we interact in modern society, and I don't necessarily think it's all on the self-identified incels, because I think they're learning the wrong lessons from sort of standard social bullying and stuff like that. So I think like one of the biggest things, and one of the things that like tends to lead these kids into these groups is, well, they start as teenagers, and a lot of them get bullied for being virgins, and they look up something like how to meet girls or something like that. They might find some pickup artistry stuff. This is actually how Elliot Rodger went on his path. He didn't actually start out in any incel community. I don't think he ever actually self-identified as an incel. I could be wrong on that, but I don't ever think he was ever part of like the sort of the Chad Stacey kind of crystallized ideology. I think that started to sort of pick up later on. But he started out like within that manosphere red pill area, and then when it didn't work for him, that was when he got very he just started like falling down into this complete death spiral. But unlike the majority of those kinds of communities, he seemed to have like the opposite reaction, where most of them seemed to start hating themselves for being subhuman. He seemed to get this impression that he was a god among men and would I don't know, rule the world or something. I don't know. So I don't necessarily think he's like perfect, but I think the fact that a lot of guys are struggling socially. Sometimes they're socially isolated. They're lonely. They don't do too well with women. Maybe they just aren't particularly socially fluent, and they're not particularly sexually fluent, and they just don't find their opportunities, or they miss signals that women are giving them. There's a lot of different reasons for this, but I think that that like inherent issue with obtaining sex and relationships isn't necessarily like something that I think is wrong to be sad about or wrong to try and ameliorate. Would you agree with that?
I mean, I feel as though when we going back to you use the word nefarious, and how you don't see that there's an inherent nefariousness to where these people come from, and
I
is that,
really
is that correct?
Yeah. I don't think there is anything inherently wrong with where they start. I think the misogyny and a lot of like the dodgy attitudes come later. I don't think this is and some of the attitudes definitely are more like low tier sort of cultural attitudes that need to change. But so for example, like the idea that if you are a virgin as a man, then that's like something wrong with you. That's a general cultural attitude, but I don't necessarily think that that's the necessary like direct cause. But I do think that probably exacerbates why these communities are building and at the rate that they are. But I think it does primarily start from people being insecure that they just aren't functioning very well with sex and relationships. And I think that the problem is that there aren't really a huge number of healthy options for young men to obtain those things. If you are struggling as a young guy, that you don't really have many options, and the first options you're going to find are red pill stuff. It is manosphere. It is like horrifically misogynistic stuff at best. At worst, it's and then the advice you tend to get from friends or people that you know around you is very boilerplate. I don't like the phrase, but I actually do think the term NPC dialogue is actually really, really useful here. Because I don't think people think. They just sort of give the sort of they say things that they think they're supposed to say, if that makes sense.
Right.
And I find that a lot of this advice is I find that well, basically, a lot of the options have a very low rate of success, and because of that low rate of success, I think that does make a lot of them think that there's something inherently wrong with them, and all they need to do is start complaining about this somewhere on the internet. They get called incel once, they Google it, and that starts the rabbit hole. And I know that because when I was on that server, when I was modding that server, there were a good number of kids who started like 14, 15, and that is exactly the story. Is they were just... They didn't know what they were doing, and then someone called them an incel, and then they started looking it up.
Right. So you're saying it's quite like a circular thing, like almost like a self-fulfilling thing to a degree.
I think it is mainly because I don't think we have much of a unlike with, say, like the alt-right or fascism, or you know, you call someone a Nazi on the internet, right? Most people have a general understanding of what Nazi means. They know of like Hitler and racism and stuff like that. They have a basic idea. So there's something reified in that already. A lot of people don't know what the term incel means. It's like only recently become a sort of semi-mainstream term. And before then, it was something that most people didn't really know anything about. So yeah, if you get called that on the internet, you're probably going to go and look it up.
Right. So I think you touched on it slightly, and it sort of forms the crux of what I want to sort of argue here. You say that lots of young men sort of struggle with their sexuality, and they struggle with the idea that they're not going to have sexual partners. And you're right, that's something which is going to affect a lot of young people. But I feel as though the clear distinguishing point here is that things like alienation and loneliness, and forget sexual friends, like just friends in general, they're things that affect everyone. They're things which are sort of universal in our society, because we come from a society which has had centuries of really harmful beliefs and practices. So, patriarchal views where, for ages, you've got two distinct categories of men and women, and they've got certain roles they're expected to perform. And they're both really sort of harmful to the actual sort of health of a person, but because they're maintained and you have to perform them, otherwise you're deemed an inferior sort of version of a man or a woman, then you're left in sort of a bit of a hole. And that was, it's only it's less than a century. In fact, no, it's been a century roughly since women's suffrage was passed in this country, and not even full women's suffrage. It's there's many countries around the world where women don't have the vote at all, and so you've got lots of these views sort of just manifest, like lingering in the air, basically, still really at the front of our sort of thought processes, and they have a massive effect on how we interact as people. And I think that you're absolutely right. They need to be addressed, and there needs to be support for those ideas, and like helping people realize that actually, like, sexuality is something which is unique to each person, and that there shouldn't be any pressure to have whatever age you have sex for the first time. Like, there shouldn't be that social pressure to have it, especially when you're you're still school age, and you shouldn't even need to be sort of worrying about it.
Yeah, like I don't think a 14-year-old should have been worrying about this stuff.
Indeed, and no one should. It shouldn't matter what age you are. Like, if it's something that you should have the support and the people around you to support you at whatever you're doing. But the clear sort of difference for me that separates that issue from the incel groups is that whereas they are things which everyone should be concerned about, everyone should be sort of thinking about, how can we have an inclusive sort of communication with people, how can we make sure people aren't feeling pressured, is that the incel groups, they tend to they'll focus exclusively on sex and sexuality. They'll sort of position themselves, as you described with these like dating advice people. They'll be like, you've got to go out and find sexual partners, and these women should be doing this and that and the other. And you get these sort of parasites who they'll come in and they'll, like with Elliot Rodger, they'll feed them really awful ideas about women and dating, or just women in general. And there's lots of good videos about this. They essentially become one of the main hubs of emotion in their life. Like they'll, because these people are sort of struggling socially,
yeah.
they come in, they'll grab them, they'll lure them in with these sort of like, yeah, you should be dating people, you should be doing this, and if you're not dating people, then it's actually signs that, you know, women are letting you down and women are doing this, and it's all nonsense. Obviously, it's all like complete crap. But because they've already got that social isolation, they're being fed, you know, like they're only getting information from these people. They're only hearing, you know, this sort of really nasty sort of bile about people. They get drawn in, and so what the solution for me is, with this, because ultimately, you know, it's not the difference with normal sort of loneliness and isolation stuff in these incel groups is a lot of their stuff is just the same like misogyny and the same bigotry repackaged, and sold as this this new sort of way of thinking of things, where, you know, where women are sort of doing these like terrible things in not sleeping with them, and, you know, society at large is, you know, rejecting men, and how women are sort of displacing men as the dominant role, and all these sort of just lies, basically, because essentially that's what they are, just real nonsense. And it needs to be sort of just labeled as the backwards ideology that it is, really, because ultimately, like, as it's all well sort of saying, you know, these people are just like lonely, they're just going to these places because there's no other alternatives.
No, I'm not suggesting that there a lot of like the Chad Stacey attitude or any of those or any of like the crazy pseudoscience that I have seen on those sites and those boards is in any way a measure of like it's not good, and it's not right, and it's not okay. And a lot of it is like horrifically misogynistic, but I don't necessarily think that like in a lot of individual cases that they're driven to the misogyny by like just pure cultural misogyny. I think it is I think there are factors that cause them to be way more extreme about it than you would see from your average guy on the street. And I do think
there's a subtext there, isn't there, though? Because, like, let's say with people who, like, you know, well, why haven't I got a girlfriend? I haven't got a girlfriend because, you know, women are being encouraged to stray from men, which is obviously quite an extreme view, and the average person is not going to sort of say that to you directly. But if we look at the sort of culture that we've sort of come from, the expectancy is that a woman will marry a man and be the wife to, you know, the man that goes out and earns the money. Sorry. There is that expectancy, which, you know, that sort of says that a woman's role is to, you know, produce children for their sort of male counterpart, to be the mother and the wife in the household. And while that doesn't necessarily like literally translate to how things are today, the sort of roots in the incel rhetoric, where, you know, girlfriends are sort of just expected by these people as their sort of right, and as a man in society, or at least sort of their unhappiness stems from this expectancy that they were sort of hoping for this to happen for them. Like, it's the same parallel. So while it isn't a direct translation, I don't feel as though I feel like you've got to be able to identify the you know, the core misogyny, the core bigotry in what's being proposed here, what's being said. And
I don't think that is necessarily like that they're being torn up by that thing, by that aspect, is necessarily caused by the fact that like there's this sort of patriarchal expectation. I think it's just the fact that most people do end up in relationships and do end up having sex, and I think that a lot of it stems from the fact that and this is actually speaking to a lot of them, is that they don't feel normal. Because I mean, the difference between, say, an incel and a guy who just doesn't have sex because he hasn't tried is the trying part. I think a lot of them are at the very least attempting to date and attempting to have friends and attempting to find some level of normalcy, and the fact that they are not experiencing said normalcy is part of the issue here. And I don't necessarily think that that's inherently misogynistic to think that, to want a girlfriend and be kind of torn up about not having one. And I think that that's part of the problem here, is that I think that to some extent relationships are a social need. I know we had a bit of a heated exchange around like whether or not like we both agree that food is an inherent need. But you are of the opinion that like relationships aren't a need and sex isn't a need. Is that?
It's so I don't think on Twitter you've got fewer words
Yeah.
to
Okay.
to
Yeah.
explain.
That's why I wanted you to clarify here. Yeah.
Right. So food is something which we need to survive. Like if we don't eat, then sooner or later we're going to die. We're going to not be able to we're not going to be able to live basically. Like you need food, you need drink, you need sleep, you need shelter. Those things are sort of visceral, tangible things which a person needs to survive. If a person, like let's say they live to 80 and they don't have sex once, that person, like the actual human being, the actual physical, tangible person, they're not gonna die. It's obviously now you can argue that socially they need those things, and you're right to a degree. People need sort of emotional happiness, and they need to be able to feel well in their mind. But a person could literally go without sex for decades. They wouldn't need to have it. And I feel as though
I would
because
agree.
having if you let me finish, having sex, you need another person to do that. And where another person comes into it, there's another autonomous human being involved. I feel as though it's sort of quite dangerous grounds to tell someone that you need this to survive, when that sort of you need another person to consent to that. Like you need another person to say yes. So it's like, imagine if so I know it's not quite analogous, but if I said, I want to do this thing, which I need another person to do, and it's my right to do it because it makes me feel happy, it makes me feel worthwhile. Sure, if I find someone that that's going to agree to that, then yeah, sure. But if I'm going to society and saying, I want to make statues of myself, and it's my right to, and they're like, well, I don't really want to do that, and I say, well, actually, no, I need to. It helps me survive. Like, sure, it's all well and good me saying that, but I can't go to another person and say, well, you need to do this with me. Like, and it's the same sort of thing here. I think we need to, like, with this issue, you're quite right. People emotionally, they feel that they need to have these things, and to a degree, everyone needs like relationships and like people that they need to talk to and stuff. But there's a difference between the sort of social connections people need. Like as a human being, we're social animals, and we need to have that stimulus in terms of like communication and talking and community and things like that. But because sex is so, it's intimate and it needs that consent and that sort of allowance to be around someone like that, it's a little bit different. And I think going from the sort of incel perspective where they're saying like, I need this to feel happy, I feel like such an unhealthy point of entry. Especially when these ideas are built upon centuries of like I mentioned earlier, the hegemonies and the unjust systems which have formed these things. So if you're a man in Western society, you've been sort of conditioned to believe that your worth is raising a family, having a wife, having kids, and while they don't literally translate to today, those things do still form a lot of the backbone of these opinions that these incels sort of come out with. So while they do say, I want a relationship, I want to have a girlfriend, it's not really formed from a very healthy position. They're not saying it because they sort of they might want that intimacy, they might want to have sex, but they're not really coming from a place where they're fully understanding what they're talking about, really, because they want to have sex, but like they don't. It's not a healthy understanding of it, because the whole sort of dynamic of it is wrong. It's like the fact they're sort of saying like my whole life's over because I've not got a girlfriend. Like it's not coming from a very healthy place, and so I sort of feel they need to like the conversation needs to be from a healthy place to discuss it with these people, and from the sort of the communities that call themselves like incel communities, like the stuff you see there just really isn't the place for that. It's really not. It's not a good place to be having those conversations. It's not a good place to be basing your construction of like what a healthy sexual relationship is.
Of course. I don't think, given that barely any of them even have the remotest idea of what a healthy relationship looks like. Obviously, it's not it's not the sort of place you would go to get an idea of what a healthy relationship looks like. That's fine. But I don't necessarily think that. I think that there is. I feel that what's happening is that because of those cultural prescriptions that do exist, and I do admit that they exist, I don't necessarily think that they are the 100% primary cause of the very clear mental health issues that stem. I think it's mostly mental health issues that end up causing this extreme reaction. But I don't necessarily think that that we should be inherently pathologizing someone, say, feeling undesirable because people don't desire them. And I also don't necessarily think that just because something requires another person, that it doesn't necessarily make it a need. Now, I think that does make it more complicated because you don't want to coerce other people. That's fine. That, I think, is a perfectly reasonable point. You can't... obviously, no one in their right minds is actually going to start advocating for state-mandated girlfriends. No one outside of very, very extreme parts of the internet. But I don't necessarily think that means that we should just do away with the idea that social bonds, that things like physical intimacy, etc., aren't needs on some level, in a similar level to other forms that other things that we consider needs in sort of modern quality of life. Yes, okay, theoretically you don't need electricity, but we would probably consider it not a life worth living to to have your electricity cut off for no reason. And that would be someone else doing it. Someone else has to provide the electricity. This is this is about living in a society, and I don't know, when it comes to sex, it's a lot more of an individual thing, and I think this is where some aspects of it get a lot more sticky, because there is this issue of, okay, we can't coerce any individual woman to have sex with an incel. That would be just completely off the table. Can't do that, right? But could we maybe change society in a way where less people, everyone just is a bit more willing to have sex with each other? I don't know. If theoretically, if that were a solution that was provided, that wouldn't be wrong. If you just built a society where everyone just wanted to, that wouldn't be a bad thing, would it? Right? Or if you I don't know, you manage to take all of these incels out of these online groups. You manage to put them into some kind of, I don't know, program, or you manage to socialize them better, and then they became people that someone wanted to have sex with. That would also be fine, right?
See,
and that would solve part of their problem. It wouldn't solve everything. But it would solve something.
The thing is, though, sorry, I'm cutting you off. What were you saying, sorry?
What I mean is, it wouldn't necessarily solve everything. Obviously, there are for every single individual incel, there tends to be a lot more going on under the hood, and I say that with the utmost compassion. They just have generally a lot more issues that tend to that are either preceding or the cause of a lot of the specifics of their insecurities. But I don't necessarily think that we should just do away with considering that part of their healing process is finding healthy relationships.
Okay, but see, I still sort of feel like this is centering the whole sort of issue here around the incels' point of view, and not the wider problem with the misogyny and stuff. So, for instance, with this, with the idea that if everyone was more open to having sex, it'd be better. That still ignores the fact that these people, they have really unhealthy views about relationships, and sort of just
how much is that?
It's not just about having sex and wanting people to have sex with you. These people have deeply flawed ideas about gender roles, relationships, and on the whole, sex itself. So it's not as though it's just that they need to find a willing sexual partner. It's actually their whole mindset is pretty flawed. You mentioned sorry to I'll let you talk in a second.
Sorry,
that's all right. You mentioned mental health even, and I feel a little bit disingenuous seems a little bit harsh, but like there's millions of people in society who struggle with like loneliness and with finding relationships and all those things. But it's a little bit different when you're in these circles and you're like actively sort of not demanding, I think is a fair word to use, because it's like it's almost like an expectancy that, oh, I've reached this age, how come I've not got this, how come I've not got that. And when you're sort of saying like, these people, if we could just address their problems, well, you're addressing the wrong problems really, because the problem isn't that they're not having sex, the problem is that they have really toxic views about the things they want. And like they, if you're you've got to sort of look at this from the people that, like in these people's mindset, like in their view, ideally they'd be sleeping with women that they like and having a nice time. Well, let's look at it from the woman's point of view. Like why should they have to be more open to having sex with these people just because they sort of want it, and they could be a little bit nicer? Like, well, actually, like you got to sort of consider that
I don't
they're
necessarily
a person
think
too.
like
And
I don't think like women don't gain from sex and relationships either. I'm pretty sure they also enjoy those things.
that's not what I said. Like,
yeah,
I mean,
no. But my point is that I don't necessarily think that would be a bad thing on the side of women either. Like, I don't think that would hurt them. I think that, and also the other part is, I think that the fact is a lot of their more maladjusted attitudes tend to come from a lack of experience. I think you kind of, if you don't have relationships and you don't have sex and stuff like that, that can build, that you have to fill those gaps in, you have to fill those gaps somehow. When you get ideas of those things, and if you don't have anything real to draw from, how do you get that?
But there are plenty of people who, there are plenty of people who sort of like don't go through school having sex, maybe even go into their 20s not having sex, like maybe even their 30s, and they don't end up in these places. Like, there's plenty of people who don't fit the sort of the oldest like ideas of when these things need to happen.
I would
and
agree.
they're absolutely fine. So I sort of feel like we're still looking at this slightly the wrong way. Really,
I think a massive percentage of that is just luck. It is just not falling down the rabbit hole. I think a lot of this is it's just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. For a good number of them, like I think another part of it is actually that this expectation isn't just from them. It's not just on themselves. It's from everyone. Like, I think a lot of people give the impression that someone is of a certain age, it would be weird for them not to have had sex or relationships. And
but that is that's a product of the older views, the patriarchal ideas.
It is, but it's still
like when
exists,
I say
right?
When I say patriarchy, people sort of hear that as like, oh, it's a dodgy term.
Oh no. I'm agreeing here. I'm agreeing that it is part of the patriarchy, but the problem is that's a part of the patriarchy that they still have to live in, and they still have to conform to some extent. Otherwise, they are seen as less of a person.
Of course. Yeah. So let's ditch the incel thing and focus on the fact, the overriding thing that affects everyone, not just this little sort of subset that's born of the same misogynistic ideas, and move on. Because like you said a second ago, these things affect everyone. Everyone has to deal with a society which has unhealthy ideas about sex and sexuality and relationships. So let's work together and sort of put aside all this like gender stuff, and put aside like the I need to have a girlfriend to be fine. I need to. I'm not going to be happy unless I have these relationships, and try and look at the overall issue, because ultimately, I feel like it's people who are sort of defining themselves as miserable because of this and are saying the really unhealthy stuff, like however you want to sort of put it, they ultimately they hold these ideas which are really unhealthy for not just themselves but people in society. Like, it's not healthy for women to have to sort of share spaces with people who think that they're sort of like they should be expected to go out with them just because they sort of want to. Like,
I don't necessarily think that they are I think there are people who do argue that, but I think that people wanting to feel desirable isn't wrong. Okay, let's take this example, right? a man and woman are in a relationship, and at some point during the relationship, the man just the man in that relationship starts being a little bit more reluctant to have sex with her. Now, that could be for a lot of reasons, but I don't necessarily think that it's inherently unhealthy or inherently toxic for her to think that that might have something to do with her. That might be something to do with a problem in the relationship, or that she's maybe not seen as desirable anymore. It could be that there are lots of confounding factors that could have caused that, and they're not all necessarily just thinking that you might be doing something wrong, or there might be something wrong with you. I don't necessarily think that that's like an inherently nasty, intrusive thought. I just think it's an intrusive thought. The problem is then indulging those things to the level of catastrophizing. The problem is that I don't necessarily think that there is a way. If we just blame the incels for internalizing patriarchy, when they're told to conform to it, and like when they try not to, they don't. Like I know there's a couple of guys on left Twitter, like they're like hard, they're very well spoken socialists, and they're socially progressive, feminists, but the problem is that they are they also consider themselves incels, right? They struggle to find relationships. They can't find any relationships, and they're sympathetic to the black pill. And the thing with the black pill and the attitude that it provides is it actually isn't. It's something that answers a lot of the questions that I think this much more almost stoic attitude towards relationships, where, well, you just don't need them. I don't think that answers the questions that they want answered. Where, okay, they're miserable, and a lot of them come into it miserable about not having relationships long before they are they internalize like anything about like a man's role as having a girlfriend or anything like that. It's just that most people have those things, and most people experience them at some point. I mean, you would probably feel a little bit inferior as a person if no one ever laughed at one of your jokes. Let's say you tried to be funny, you were telling jokes all the time, and then no one ever laughed at one of your jokes. Would that never build an insecurity in your life?
Well, no, but I don't
exactly,
I don't
right?
feel it's the same. I don't think it's quite.
No, and I'm not necessarily saying it's the same. But the thing is that would build some level of insecurity. Now, in the same way, if you've never met anyone in your entire life that has found you attractive, let alone attractive enough to actually go out with, that would really build some level of insecurity. Because, especially how much we value attractiveness in society. But, I mean, that's not going away anytime soon. We've got to build something, we've got to build a solution to this that, before we end patriarchy. I'd rather, like, maybe try and prevent the incel problem from building long before the maybe hundreds of years we're going to take to abolish those kinds of power structures. And in that sense, I think that a lot of this comes down to people not really like understanding what drives those insecurities, and a lot of it is just that we do have those kinds of emotional needs, and that some of the a lot of the advice and a lot of media stereotypes and even the way people react to these insecurities can help end up reinforcing them. I think people tend to be quite unsympathetic to these things, or I find that it's almost kind of a reappropriating of sort of males, like patriarchal male stoicism, to just say, get over it. You don't need a relationship, fuck you. That's kind of how it comes across when a lot of them hear that, is, oh, well, okay, I just sort of sit here and remain miserable. How am I going to become happier if my circumstances don't change? And I don't know, it like I find a lot of these. I don't think pathologizing a need for relationships is the solution to this. I think it's more socializing people better and building social conventions that prevent people from falling into these sort of insular, toxic online communities, rather than just having social opportunities. Like, I'm sure you've been on a night out, right? You've been on a good few nights out, and you've probably chatted to friends of friends, right? They're easier to talk to than strangers, aren't they?
Yes, but
yeah, it's easier to start a conversation with someone your friend knows, because there's that social bond there. There's that social proof. You're probably you probably have something to talk about. At the very least, there's a reason to say hi to them, rather than just walking up to a random stranger and saying hi. That can be daunting for even some of the most socially confident of people. And I think that I think a lot of it comes down to that. I think most of this would be solved if what we ended up doing was just not letting people fall down these rabbit holes in the first place.
Okay, but for me, if you want to stop people from falling down these rabbit holes and falling into these really toxic spaces, you've got to sort of call it for what you've got to see it, call it as it is. You've got to sort of say these places are deeply misogynistic, and sort of you've got to be a bit harsh. You've got to be a bit firm. You've got to say, well, actually, there's some real disgusting stuff in these places, and I find scorched earth might seem a little bit extreme, but you've got to, for one, you've got to stop all the I forget their names now. You mentioned them earlier. The people who give really
pick up artistry, manosphere types. They need to fucking go. I swear to God, we need to burn those communities to the ground.
That's the first one. The second one is you've got to these people. I feel you've got to have a little bit of responsibility with if you're one of these people, you've got to sort of recognize that you hold some pretty gross beliefs about things, and you've got to go and seek help. You can't I
think the main problem though,
if your mental health is if you're in a really bad place because you're thinking, I've got all these anxieties about not having a girlfriend, but then you're also sort of thinking, I'm an incel, I'm doing this, I'm really unhappy with how women have not looked at me as desirable. I feel as though you sort of need to be getting support for that, because ultimately it's not on society to tell you are desirable. It is nice to be called
I completely disagree. I completely disagree. I think society does need to validate everyone. I think it needs to make everyone feel good about themselves.
And part of that is deconstructing the bigotries we have in how we view people. Making sure obviously there's a difference between sort of everyone being able to have the chance to be seen as beautiful, and deconstructing the negative body standards and body positivity and all of that. That's all fine, but no one owes you telling you are desirable. You can't make someone find you attractive. It's a little bit unfair, I think, to play because these people, they're not sort of looking at broader desires. They've got their own ideals of what they find attractive, and I feel it's a little bit unfair to in this case to go to these women and say find me more desirable. It's a little bit, you've got to unpack your own sort of unhealthy beliefs before you go and start wanting to have partners.
I think everyone
made an analogy earlier. Sorry, I want to get back to something you said. You said, if no one laughed at your jokes, you'd be feeling a bit upset. And then you say, if no one found you desirable, you'd be upset. But they're two different things, I feel, because one is about community and about having those social interactions. And that's really important. Everyone should be able to, a human being needs interaction. They need to have the ability to talk and laugh and have those conversations. And that's absolutely fine. But when it comes to sex, that's so, I think it's more intimate and personal, and every person's got their own ideas and what they're comfortable with that. And just being desired obviously is great. Everyone should have the chance to be. Everyone should be able to have a level playing field in terms of the ability to find people that they're close to like that. But it's not an expectancy. I feel there should be more. We shouldn't have to sort of cater to the idea that every single person needs to have a partner by a certain time, otherwise you're just sad and miserable. Like, you should be able to healthily say, well, it's not happened for me yet, but okay, it's like I've got the whole life ahead of me. You've got to be a bit
Well,
more realistic about it. You've got to be a bit more like level-headed about it, and
yeah, but
you can't.
I don't
And I think
necessarily think that this
deconstructing some of
was.
these views, deconstructing some of these sort of attitudes that, it's society's fault that people don't find me attractive, would lead to some of these sort of incel types feeling much better about themselves and not sort of caring as much that they've not had sex. And because, like, for one, how do they, if they've not had it, how do they know they even want it? Like, what if they have it and they what if they what if they actually have it and find that actually, well, it's not left me feeling suddenly like I'm a complete man. I actually don't really feel any different. Like,
I think that's actually a revelation that they need to have. And I think that is the kind of revelation that they can only have if they've had sex first.
But like,
they can only internalize that firsthand. That is something that, and that is one of the reasons why I think that would completely destroy a massive amount of those communities, because there were guys who had that revelation that, oh yeah, sex didn't like fundamentally change me as a person.
The point is, though, that those people then need another person to do that with.
Yeah,
and I don't think it's fair on those people to just have to go and you can't just expect someone to sleep with them.
Yeah, but we're not coercing anyone here. I've already said that, but I don't think that if we tried to foster we tried to build a world that fostered the situations where people would willingly do it is necessarily wrong.
But why does it have to be why can't it be them making the change? Why can't we sort of we've got to have a bit of responsibility and say, well, actually, you've got some quite unpleasant views. Let's unpack them. Then we'll talk about.
So let's go with 2 points here. Okay, so number one, I don't necessarily think all of the toxic views, especially the standard patriarchy stuff, is what's necessarily stopping them, because I mean almost everyone in the world adopt some aspects of sort of patriarchal attitudes, or even in sort of more subtle ways they will conform to it, etc., etc. So everyone to some extent is contributing to patriarchy and gender roles, etc. So in that sense, I don't think that is necessarily the best. I think that is the goal, to get rid of those attitudes from everyone. I don't think specifically incels. And second, and because of that, I don't think that is necessarily the primary reason that they're failing, or that they are struggling specifically. In my experience, I've met a lot of guys. I know a lot of guys, and they don't all have the healthiest attitudes towards sex and relationships. And healthy attitudes on sex and relationships don't automatically get you those things, and having unhealthy ones doesn't preclude you from having them. I could hear I've heard so many horrific things from guys who have girlfriends or are married, or can pull any girl at a nightclub that they want. I don't necessarily think that we should focus specifically on healing these individual people's I think we need to have I think we need to also point that gun in that specific area at society itself, because I think that's where a lot of these attitudes come from, is from more sort of ingrained stuff. And I don't think that you can stop people from internalizing at least en masse. I don't think you can stop people from internalizing those attitudes first. And second, I think that actually it's building from that point, because it doesn't necessarily stop them from it doesn't stop anyone from having those attitudes. I think that we need to deal with whatever other aspects of their social of whatever's causing their issues with socialization. If you want something and you can't have it, then I think what we need to do is we need to work out why they want something and can't have it. There are a good number of incels who are, say, POC. They experience a lot of racism when it comes to the dating scene, and I know that's a problem. And so I think that having a space to discuss and deal with that and learn some level of coping mechanism for an issue in society that's not going to like instantly go away. A lot of them are say short. That's a big insecurity, and I think that does, especially when it comes to dating apps that very often require you to put your height on there. That can be a problem. And if that's precluding them from having these attitudes, yeah, okay, you can't force women to say to start dating men who are shorter, but I think you can you can sort of suggest that maybe you should reconsider your having such a hard preference for height. And I think the same. No, and I'd say the same thing for men as well. Like, I think men should also reconsider everything they think they find attractive. I think everyone should do this because it also makes your dating life healthier. That you should reconsider what you find attractive and why, who you find attractive and why, and you should genuinely think about it. Because if you've got some dodgy attitudes, or if you've got some like unkept emotional needs that you're not looking at properly, I think that's an important thing to do, and I think we would have much healthier discourse on this if we could discuss the sort of larger societal issue of that. A lot of men don't necessarily. I don't think we sexualize men in the same way that we do women, and that is part of the reason that I think a lot of men feel undesirable in this way, because, like, I mean, incel is more like the extreme aspect of it. There are loads of guys who struggle with dating, just generally. Like, they still have relationships and have girlfriends and whatnot, and women have other issues. They have different but like very similar issues in that they feel undesirable for other reasons. And I don't think we should just sort of throw all of those anxieties away because some of them have some roots in patriarchy. I think that we need to I think providing for people's building a society that provides for people's emotional needs, and everyone does it, or at least as many people as possible do it willingly, and so that we have healthier relationships, we have healthier friend groups, because at the end of the day, if someone's sad that they don't have friends or they don't have a social life, I don't necessarily think that makes them a bad person. I don't necessarily think lacking relationships necessarily makes them a bad person.
The thing is, though, we're conflating that overall sadness, which you've touched on, with the specific sort of incel points, which take that sadness and assign blame to various things in society which haven't quite matched up. You said a few things there, like you mentioned black incels. The problem, like, there's a difference between racism in dating, which is a legitimate thing, where people have different attitudes towards people of black people. And sort of their features and stuff, and how that influences how we view attractiveness. That's, I think, different to the incel part, which is blaming women for not finding you attractive and seeing it as like, oh, you've let me down. My societal roles at stake here. The short thing, plenty of short people are in relationships. There's plenty of short.
But like, I'm not agreeing that it makes it impossible for them. I'm not saying it necessarily makes it impossible for them, but it definitely does make it harder. And I can understand why someone who is insecure or just is just consistently in the wrong place at the wrong time might have so little success that they think it's impossible. And if they want to do it and can't, even if, you can't force anyone to... No one's suggesting that you should force anyone, but finding... I don't necessarily think that necessarily also makes them like someone who has to inherently improve. I think that there are...
Like, you can't... You can't really... Like when you said earlier, people should be encouraged to change their preferences.
Well, I never said change. I never said change. I said re-examine.
Or consider.
Yeah, consider. Yeah.
There's a difference between sort of thinking about the wider racism, which sort of makes certain features that like black people have seem more like unattractive. Like, for instance, when you look at Barbie dolls and you see that all the dolls will be like white in the store, that's, I think, a completely different thing to like, telling people that, short people need to be dated as well, when really short people are in relationships.
Well,
and really, I feel like that point is actually a little bit...
I think that there is
you're sort of straying from the actual point, which is that, you know, incel ideology and incel sort of thought processes, they're not looking at sensible, healthy relationships. They're just
Of
sort of
course they're
like
not.
aspiring. Exactly.
I'm
So
yeah. But
like
I'm
to say,
suggesting that the legitimate problems that they do experience, and I do think that lacking relationships, at least from their perspective, is a problem because they aren't happy. Now, it might not be the only problem that they're experiencing, but I don't think the majority of incels would just like not have their lives improved if they found a healthier relationship.
yeah, but man, that's the same for anyone, isn't it? Like that's
Yeah.
not just an incel thing. That's anyone who, you know, is lonely. Will have a
Yeah,
happier life if
exactly.
they have a
And
healthy
why should
relationship.
we not be
But
trying to? Why should we not be like maybe I don't know, looking for ways to make sure that that happens more often? And
but
I'm not.
that's a different thing, isn't it? Everyone should have healthy relationships of all kinds in their life, but incels specifically need to unpack their harmful ideas before they can just sort of start diving into dating and saying, yeah, you know, why haven't I got a girlfriend? Like the short people. Short people have relationships. So it's not the fact that a person is short that they're not being dated. It's not the fact that they're short which
Um.
is yeah, affecting things. They've got to sort of look at their own ideas. There are plenty of short people that are in healthy relationships. There are plenty of tall people who aren't. So it's not as though there's like some inherent like you're short, so you're not going to find luck in the dating pool. Like
Yeah,
there's
but
something else
that's.
at play.
I think yeah. There's a little bit more to it than that, and that's obvious. And I think anyone who's going to say it is going to say, oh, anyone who's going to help them out in this situation is going to admit, yeah, there's more to it than that. But I don't necessarily think that we should, like here, oh yeah, short people have relationships, but yeah, but if you have any understanding of things like dating apps or just you just know anything about this kind of discourse, that being short for a man is considered less attractive than being tall, and
Yeah,
that can make it harder. So that can make your dating life harder.
like
Right.
short. You know, the sort of stereotypical strong man is tall, and they have those sort of they're tall, but
Yeah,
that
he's
again
tall,
comes back
physically
to
strong, and has a chiseled jawline. You know that. Yeah,
sure,
there's
but
that.
they're things generated from again our older understanding of you know, the masculine role of patriarchy, and
That's
ultimately for one,
true,
but then
but
that's two things there. Firstly, like that doesn't instantly mean, oh, you know, if you're short it's just game over
oh
for
no,
you.
no, no. But I
Like
wasn't saying that.
there's a
I wasn't
legitimate
saying that.
point in sort of unpack, you know, we should be celebrating all bodies. Everyone should be able to feel comfortable in their own skin, in their own body, but there's a difference between that and, you know, like incels tend to do, turning it into like, oh, you know, you need to just you need to date me because if you don't then you're not giving short people a chance. Like there's more at play here. It's not just about that, oh, I've got these features so therefore I'm going to lose at life. It's actually like there's an attitude here to it. Like if
Do you think
I
that?
feel
Do you
as
think
though
that like people's attraction when it comes to certain traits isn't affected by their values, and
well,
how they view these sorts of things? Like,
I
you,
personally feel that like the way a person looks is, you know, obviously it matters, but like it's influenced by the sort of person that you are. Like these, a lot of these incels, like they are possessing some really unhealthy attitudes towards dating on the whole and women in general. So to a degree, that informs how they are being perceived. Like you look at like Elliot Roger, for instance, you know, posting videos about how women have caused the decay of the planet and stuff. And like, sure, that's an extreme example, but that's the end point of a lot of the sort of paths that some of these people are on. And you look at you know, when we're saying like, you know, oh, you know, short people aren't being given a chance, you know, you're just not interested. Like there's, as we said, there's plenty of short people who are in relationships. So it's not as
yeah,
though there's no. Also the other thing, like there are lots of people who are single. Like there's lots of people who are perfectly happy and they have, you know, sex and they have like friends and stuff, and they're not in a relationship. So it's not as though there's like this gold dust in being in a, you know, a partnership of sorts. Like you
well,
can find happiness without it, and I think that's sort of also the other angle that we're missing here. Like you can't center yourself around just having another person in your life to be happy. You've got to also look at yourself and think about what is in your own head, which is, you know, that is affecting your happiness. And if you're if you need another person that badly to just have your happiness, you sort of like as you need to there's other issues at play, and I think with incels
I wouldn't
especially,
necessarily I wouldn't necessarily 100% agree with that. I
like
think
if you don't like you,
I think it is very very incredibly difficult to build a particularly like healthy view of relationships and be happy if you desire relationships and you don't experience them at all. I think if you don't want them, you can, and that can be fine. But I think that there's always going to be that struggle with that sort of internal I want this thing that I can't have that is going to mess with their heads.
yeah, but you know their want, they got to sort of unpack that and analyze it. I feel like you got to ask, why do you want a girlfriend? Why do they want to have these relationships? And sure, they want to feel like they've got a place in society. They want to feel like they've got someone they can be intimate with. But that's not like, there's a difference between wanting relationships and wanting intimacy. And like the first one, that can be achieved in many ways. Like you can meet friends in loads of places. You can have just conversations with people.
I think
and
that's a different kind of intimacy, though, isn't it?
Of course, but that's still like these people, like, as you said earlier, like lots of these people are just lonely to begin with. Like
yeah, I entirely agree.
Interacting with people, and therefore they're going down this path. And rather than sort of taking small steps and sort of doing things that could help them, they're diving into these awful communities where they're told you're unhappy because women aren't, subservient to you, and you're not getting a girlfriend, and it's all women's fault. And instead of, they're not getting any other help. So instead of, thinking, well, yeah, actually, if they just had a girlfriend, they'd be better. They should be going to like therapy, and there should be support for them to unpack these ideas. And there should almost be like, like class analysis and like feminist like theory and stuff for them to have a look at, which will show them that actually, there's more. It's not just women are against me because they're evil. There's centuries old patriarchal ideas which are influencing the way we're thinking about society. And even though I'm 5'1", maybe I've got a place in society. It's just that society for a long time has been built on not very nice ideas about how men and women should be. Maybe maybe even though I'm in my 20s, I've not had sex. It's not the end of the world. That's just how life is sometimes. Like you don't have to base your whole happiness on those things. And if we're telling incels those things,
let's say
it doesn't have to be so centered on it.
I get the okay. So let's say you bring this incel, you give him this like feminism 101 education, right?
Mm.
You give him a therapist, and he talks about how it still makes him insecure and he feels sad, etc., etc. And you tell him, actually, no, you shouldn't feel the need to have relationships. And then he asks, why am I still sad?
Okay, so you don't be as blunt as saying you shouldn't feel the need to have relationships. You'd ask them like, why? What is it? Why do you want a girlfriend? Why is it so? Why is your life going to be a disappointment if you don't have this?
I still find that this is kind of
because
I feel that we still do have some level of general desire to pair bond. It's not inherent. I don't think it's 100% inherent, but I think most of us do want to do that, and we do gravitate towards doing that.
To a degree, but that's informed heavily by like the way it manifests. Obviously, there's that root desire, but the way it manifests in many people is influenced by the society we live in. And like we got to sort of say, we got to also consider, like, for all we can talk about this, like the hypothetical incel going into this meeting, there's also like, if they get their way, there's another person in the relationship and they have thoughts and feelings too. Why should they have to, why should the conversation solely be about the person which has the harmful view, and not the person that, were they to get their way, would be subject to all of this stuff? Because like, let's say they get their relationship, if they don't change the way they're thinking about things, there's a poor woman who's going to have to put up with a load of like really harmful ideas and probably be in a pretty unhealthy relationship. So before we start,
I know, and I would agree, but I think that the process of I don't necessarily think that like you should take an incel and like put him on a dating site and find a woman that's attracted to him, and then like suddenly like throw him into a relationship. I don't think that like that would be the solution here. But I do think that if you re-socialize them and have that education build with an increase in their sort of like social health. So they build more social skills. They find more friends. They start meeting women that are attracted to them, right? But not necessarily straight up. Not necessarily straight up. Like a straight up relationship that suddenly they start getting compliments.
But
they start
women that are attracted to them, it's not like a social group you can put your finger on.
No,
it's subjective.
That's the problem here. Yeah, that is a problem here, right? But if you socialize someone long enough, they will start to happen, right?
But there's no guarantee, because that relies on other people's thoughts. Like it's not like you can say to someone
anything, right? I mean,
but like with certain things, like if someone was starving, you could go and say, like, here's your food bank, here's your food, here you are. Your right to food is supplied here. If someone was on the streets, a good society would say, yeah, here's a house, we'll put you up, you'll be fine. But there's no, like, as cruel as it might sound, there's no guarantee that someone is just going to date you. Like, you've got a part of being in a healthy society is accepting that, yeah, you're not always going to just find people that are attracted to you straight away. So let's change the incel mindset. Let's ditch all the misogyny stuff. Let's ditch all the things that say, yeah, you've got a right to a girlfriend. You've got your life is wrong if you, hold on.
But where do they internalize those attitudes? They internalize those attitudes from other people, and they're not going to.
That's part of the unpacking.
But I think like it's just going to be hard to pathologize them from over time conforming to existing social norms. So like if you interact with enough people and say you're a virgin at 30, and if you ever mention that to someone, they're probably going to be intrigued. Oh, why hasn't that happened? How have you not got a relationship at 30? How have you never been in a relationship? Those will be the sorts of questions that they'll be asked.
Yes,
and then they're not. The thing is that is a question that society asks them, right? And people will ask them. And the problem is that in my experience, outside of you can say, like, you could maybe argue, oh well, relationships are hard, and because of I don't know, you could maybe have something about patriarchy not seeing you as a good man, and therefore you're not seen as particularly attractive, and therefore like and you can go down that route. But I mean, is that really going to be like I don't think that is actually something that would be accepted in the current day. I can't see, like, if you made your, like, if you had like a Twitter account and you were like, hey, I'm a 30-year-old virgin because patriarchy doesn't see me as like a worthwhile man, right? I don't see that as like I think the vast majority of online leftists would bully the fuck out of you, and they would call you a virgin incel lol. Go back to Reddit or something.
But that's quite a blunt and, let's be honest, unrealistic sort of thing that would happen. Because for one, as I said earlier, like, if we're unpacking patriarchal ideas, we're looking at people who, if, like, let's say there's that person who is in that situation, a healthier society you wouldn't have the social expectation and pressure to be in relationships and to have sex and all of those sort of things. So a person
but I think that we're not yet there yet, are we?
Of course, so that's why we have to try and move the conversation to being healthier about those things, and to ditch the sort of incel way of looking at things, where there's like, oh, if you're a failure if you've not done this, and woe is me, I've not had a girlfriend, whatever. Like, you've got to ditch all that, and you've got to teach healthier attitudes about these things, B, have the sort of the mental health support for people who are sort of feeling bad about that to feel better about themselves, without sort of, because I don't feel like you can't go into the trap of thinking like, my life's going to be better if I have XYZ, when XYZ is another person's relationship and time, and you could, like, that's not something that you can guarantee to anyone. Like, you can't
guarantee it, but you can increase the rate of it to like a certain point.
But you increase the rate yourself if you get rid of the incel stuff, like just by like it's just
Yeah,
natural.
but
Like,
you
if
can
you're going
but
to,
you can increase your rate of getting a job by doing certain things. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we then sort of throw them to the wolves and suggest that no, you shouldn't. We shouldn't make a society that makes it easier for you to find a job. Because
no, but
yes, you
those
have to
things,
find. Yeah, but you have to find someone who will give you a job. They have to choose to do that.
but we're straying into like with jobs, but we're straying into sort of capitalist critique here because
Yeah,
we
well, that's the point. I think that to some extent there is a similarity here.
but
That's the
I don't,
point.
because one, we work because in capitalist society, if we don't sell our labor, capitalists will not give us access to the food they own, the water they own, the land they own, etc., etc. And that is something which is unfair, because ultimately everyone should have the right to those things. Everyone should have access to those things without having to serve as some rich person's profit margin. We shouldn't have to live in a society where the things we need to get by are all controlled by various billionaires for their profits. That's different to someone wanting a relationship and then wanting someone else's time and companionship just because they want it. Like, you can't. You've got to move on from the idea that people are just inherently sort of owed that. And
Well,
part of
I'm
the
not
healthy
saying they're
society.
necessarily that they're inherently owed that, but I think that the vast majority of people, I think, because they are decent people, they probably do deserve to. If we can get it to happen without coercing anyone, but just through increasing the health of society, and increasing how we moving people into interacting with each other in the most positive way possible, then I don't necessarily think that there would be any problem with that.
But
I,
like, how you can't tell a person when, like, yeah, relationships don't work in the way that you can't just sort of say, yeah, there's going to be guaranteed someone's going to show up in your life at this
oh no,
time.
no,
There's,
of course not.
every person is their own person, so you've got to sort of
Yeah, well,
say to
I'm talking
incels,
about
you're
mitigation here, though. I'm talking about mitigating this problem to some extent, where I think, like, so for example, I think that these groups have built have expanded during COVID, right?
yes, because
Yeah,
there's fewer points of interaction. Yeah,
fewer points of
but
interaction. People are at home. They just find themselves with less of a voice in their ear, so less of a conflicting voice in their ear, right? All they have is that internet community.
mm,
And like I said, this is why I think, like, just natural socialization can have a massive effect on like dealing with these like more extreme aspects of misogyny. Yes, in the wider sense, you would need to also deal with larger aspects of cultural of patriarchy and misogyny and misandry and all of the aspects that would create this in a slightly less healthy aspect. But I think that in terms of prevention and cure, I think that healthy socialization is a massive aspect of it.
socialization in terms of improving social, like the mental health services that I would be ascribing to these people. You would be helping them gain their confidence, helping them relate to people and stuff. But you also have to include in that, unpacking the sort of really harmful beliefs they have,
Oh,
and
of
B,
course.
helping them understand that it's actually it's not the end of the world if you're not in a relationship, and those things
Yeah, but
come
that I think
once.
that problem is that then you've got to that they can't I I find that that's kind of unsympathetic
How
to
though?
their plight.
Because it's just reality, isn't it? Like, you can't. A relationship requires another person of their own autonomy to you say, yeah, I want to be in a relationship with you. That's not something you can guarantee, for the same reason that if you, like, let's say you're in a shop um and you're selling something, you can't guarantee that someone's going to buy it. Like, if obviously, like, me as a socialist, like, I don't ascribe to market capitalism, but, like, let's say in a perfect world, you've got I'm selling my I don't know, lemonade. You come to the shop, you say, yeah, I'd like some lemonade. Like, yeah, brilliant, right, let's make a deal, and we exchange stuff for lemonade. We both agreed to that. Like, I can't, if no one comes and buys my lemonade, I can't be like, yo, I want someone to come and buy it. How come no one's buying my lemonade? Similarly, I know it's not quite analogous because these are two different things, but a person that wants to be in a relationship, they can't, like, there's no guarantee that they're just going to instantly happen across someone that does. Eventually, maybe one day,
Yeah,
sure.
but
Like in the
that's
future,
the
they can
point. Is
aspire to that.
the
They've got to.
eventually, or and the reducing the
But
number of people
it's a maybe.
who struggle, right?
There's no guarantee in life that you're just going to find
you can't.
someone.
Yeah,
So,
you can't guarantee anything. But
indeed,
it doesn't mean that like we shouldn't be trying to make it happen as much as possible.
but like I don't see why like society has to cater to this view when the view itself is a pretty unhealthy one. They should be sort of being told that it's not the end of the world. It's not a guarantee that those things are just going to happen. So instead of like blaming women, excuse me, instead of blaming people for their loneliness, they've got to look at things through the more sort of analytical lens and think, my loneliness, instead of blaming women for it, it's to do with the alienation that capitalism gives to the working person under an increasingly profit-driven world, and B, just the like you say, we've been in a pandemic. Everyone's feeling a little bit isolated. That's not women's fault. That's just being stuck at home for ages because we've not been able to go outside. Like, there's different factors here, and part of the way we can get rid of a lot of these problems is by being brutal to the to the sort of the core incel movement, like going to these sort of like you say, the communities where they draw in these young men and make them sort of believe these really awful ideas. Well, boot them off the platform, get rid of them, and then you can, with that sort of space, that vacuum that's created, offer the resources to help them unpack these sort of harmful ideas. But at core,
yeah, but I think that
at a real core,
what I mean is, I don't think you can inherently completely unpack all the harmful ideas without also solving the. I don't think you can completely unpack the harmful ideas without also solving the issues that they're experiencing. It's kind of like I'll say it. It's kind of like with people who are anti-immigration, right? And in sort of like in certain job sectors where they feel that immigrants are coming to take their jobs or lowering their wages, etc., right? You don't just tell them shut up and stop being racist, or give them the sort of talk equivalent of that. You also do at the very least. So say for example with certain jobs where they're displaced by I don't know, like a free trade deal or something. What you want to do in that situation is find some other form of employment. You want to be able to help them build a different life, or you want to improve the circumstances that led them to these crappy ideas in the first place. Because I don't think you can just people aren't perfect, and given certain circumstances, some people are just going to have are going to be led to bad ideas if they've got bad circumstances, and I think that is also a bigger aspect of it. I don't think we should just tell I don't know we should just tell people, oh yeah, sorry, it's just going to be harder for you to find a job. Oh yeah, okay, you might just have to have one that is lower paying. You don't need a job that is that pays 50 grand a year. You can have one that pays 30 grand a year.
But in that situation, we can use our capitalist lens to see that as a societal problem. So the worker that's losing their job because the boss can bring in an immigrant who is going to take lower wages for the same job, that is capitalism in action, where you've got the hegemony of the country, where a person from another country that's deemed less, like a lesser developed country, can be paid less for the same job, and so they're naturally going to exploit the person they can pay less. And you can say to that person, this isn't because the immigrants are bad and they're stealing British culture. It's because the market forces of capitalism will always tend to the biggest profits, and ultimately people of all walks and all walks of life are being exploited by this. And you can bring that lens to it, instead of saying, like, as you've said, it's wrong to just say, yeah, you're a bad person if you're concerned about this. You've got to actually talk about it, and you've got to actually use the lens to say, yes, it's racist to just blame immigrants, but you've your concern is not. I'm not explaining this.
It's
Sorry,
yeah,
you've got to like there's
the concern of their circumstances worsening, even if
yes,
it's not the
yeah,
end of the world, is still fair and it's still understandable for them to be torn up about
yeah,
that.
exactly.
It's not
But that is
yeah, and I think
different.
that's
That's entirely different. I feel to a person saying, yeah, other men are getting women, I'm not getting women, I'm feeling bad about this, because that view is ultimately like there's no not really a like concern there which can't be addressed by sort of the unpacking the beliefs they have. Like there's no even
why
even
why
if
isn't
in a
there?
sorry
I mean,
because they're not there's
we've
no
both agreed that that sex and relationships are things that do tend to improve someone's life and do tend to make someone
well
happier.
they can do, but
Yeah,
the person who
like I
has
said, they tend to. They
like yeah,
I
they
mean,
can do. There's no like every person in society has their own individual needs and wants, and like for all incels say, yeah, a girlfriend, I'd be fine. Like again, it ignores the fact that there's another person you're involving here, which like they have their own wants and needs, and like they're not sort of just they don't just exist to make your life better. And B, like there's no guarantee that'll fix anything. What if the relationship is such a disaster that their life gets even worse? Because let's say they have a really messy breakup and they're now actually even worse for having like really like messed up for a short period of time. Like there's no guarantee that this will work
I
because
mean,
they still have
yeah,
all
but
those
I
really
never
positive
said
views.
I
Like
never
it's
said
not
that relationships were the primary solution. I was also agreeing that you do need to you do need to build a healthier attitude towards people in general. I just don't necessarily think I think that improving their social standing would not only be a part of the cure for these types of people, but it would also, if more people are in that situation, they wouldn't ever be in the position where they're going onto incel forums in the first
but
place.
what do you mean by in that situation?
As in, if more people found healthy relationships by the time, I don't know, they were like 19, 20, or found a relationship, and maybe even if it was terrible, I don't think that we would be like if that were just more common and we weren't becoming more atomized and harder and finding it harder to build relationships and harder to interact with each other. If that were if we reversed that trend and started I don't know, reversing the atomization of society, I think that what you would see is you would see less incels because you would have that. It's an ounce of prevention.
But
It's
you
an ounce of
can't.
prevention, and it's worth a pound of cure.
Okay, but you can't find a healthy relationship without also finding a person that wants to be in that relationship, and that is not something you can guarantee because you can't like it's not like you're finding like a pot of gold. Like you need to actually like know the other person, and you've got to think about their needs, and you've got to work out
I
how you're going to do this. Like you can't tell someone there's going to be just a person
I
waiting for
think
you.
I
Like you've
think
got
that
to
there
improve your
are
whole mindset. I feel.
I think that it's very
Sorry,
clear
back in
that
a sec.
one could.
Hold on,
Oh, okay.
David.
Yep.
Back in a second. I'm just gonna I'll be back in a minute. All right.
Yeah. One sec. Yeah. Fair enough. Whew. This is it's getting heated. I just don't like the idea that we just pathologize the emotional need for relationships. I feel that they are massively important. There's a reason that we use the phrase touch starved, and that's the reason that during COVID everyone's just been completely brain melted. It's not good for anyone. And I don't like the consistent idea that we should just tell incels that it's not the end of the world, because part of the problem is that a lot of their catastrophization is around the fact that they will never be happy. If you tell someone that like the one of their life goals is completely impossible and they should just give up, they're gonna be really miserable. And if you also have a society where in the next 20 years is not going to change and is still going to negatively judge them for failing to meet that goal, I just don't see it as a tenable solution. It's just like, even if you take all of the specifics of the internal aspects of wanting a relationship around, like, I don't know, some perceived entitlement to having another person want you. At the end of the day, you're never going to get rid of, at least within the next, within anyone's lifetime, anyone now that is alive is going to see a world where you aren't judged negatively for failing to have relationships.
Hello, sorry to.
Hello.
Sorry, what were you saying
Yeah.
before I...
Okay. So yeah. So I think part of what I was saying just while you were gone, I just thought I'd make sure there was no dead air. The reason I don't like the whole "it's not the end of the world" if you don't have a relationship is because it's not just an internal thing. It's not just the things you experience in a romantic relationship that have that effect. It's also how you're perceived by other people. That's a massive aspect of a lot of this, is that people get very people can get very invasive around this stuff, and not just that they're invasive, that they can also struggle to they just don't respect it a lot of the time. I mean, even on left Twitter, it's very common for people to shame people for being virgins. Like, even in some of the most progressive circles that you can find, it's still looked down upon to struggle to find relationships, because especially around men, there is this idea that male virtue is centered around being attractive to women, that women are attracted to the best men, and that if you aren't attractive to women, then you suck as a person. And that is very commonly exploited even by sort of more progressive circles. And it is a patriarchal stereotype, but it's one that they have to live with. Even if you can tell them, yeah, it's not the end of the world if you never experience this, they're also going to have to experience all of the other negative aspects of that sort of lower social status that come from a lack of relationships.
Okay, but the fact that some people in left-wing circles are guilty of using patriarchal stereotypes and unpleasant stuff towards these people, the fact that happens doesn't...
I'm just saying that... No, I'm just saying that is, even in the most progressive circles, you're still somewhat looked down on. In more normal circles, that is even further, right?
Of course, but that doesn't justify all the incel stuff. That doesn't sort of make it...
No, none of it justifies the incel stuff. No, I mean, I've said that so many times already, that I don't think it justifies the any of the incel ideology, but I do think that a general desire... I don't think that you can deprogram an incel by just telling them that their life will be fine if they don't have a relationship.
But it's not just that, though, is it? Because it's also unpacking all the views they've collected through their time in these communities. So it's not just about dating. It's also about the woman's role in the workplace. It's about how they speak to and hear what women say. It's about how they're viewing women in media. Because like, there's a lot of overlap between like these incel circles and like the people who complain about like when a new TV show has like a female lead role. And you'll see these ridiculous, like, oh yeah, you know, it's just PC gone mad. This woman's been put here. It's not realistic. All just this like guff and nonsense about various things that involve minorities, and it also overlaps with a lot of the like anti-black stuff and anti-LGBTQ stuff, because a lot of these incel circles, they're like entry points for like lots of far-right organizers to capture these people. And so I think their worldview is not like... Obviously, they want a girlfriend, and that's a large part of what they want. But there's also other views which can be unpacked too. And with like, it's not just one thing you're saying to them. You're deconstructing a lot of their views, and you'll find that once you start doing that, a lot of the sort of desire for like what they perceive as how they're going to be right in society will start to, you know, not be as big a thing. Because like, yeah, obviously these people, they want a girlfriend, they want to have sex. But they also, as you said earlier, they're probably a little bit lonely. They want connection. They want to have a role in society. They want to feel like they're worthwhile. And so because they've been fed so much like misogynistic stuff, they think that their role in they're going to be happy just by having this girlfriend.
Yeah,
And
I think
they might not even have the words to express that they're also feeling unhappy about their work, their sort of their place in society, their job, their status, their hobbies, all those sorts of things. So if they learn to unpack the negative, misogynistic, sort of bigoted stuff, and start seeing that there actually is value to be found in stuff, just not through this sort of patriarchal lens, they might find that maybe they still want to have a girlfriend, but they can find happiness in other things, and they can find that there's more to, you can have relationships which don't have to just be about sex and about being in a partnership, but it can still be rewarding and happy.
Well, but I don't think any of them. I don't think any of them would be opposed to having friendships.
Exactly. So then, why do they? It doesn't have to go. They don't have to go leap. They don't need to be like told, there's a girlfriend waiting for you, or like, we're gonna make society so that people are more likely to date you. They can be, sort of have a healthier overall view, and eventually through that, perhaps that will lead to things. But there's a perhaps there's a maybe. There's no guarantee in life that these things are going to happen.
I think that that aspect is where I think the massive amount of advice that is generally provided to these sorts of people tends to fall short. Is that most people will guarantee. I know that a lot of people where they experience this advice, it is, oh yeah, don't worry, you're amazing, you will find someone. And I think that, and when I have had guys come to me for advice and stuff, I've just said I can't guarantee anything. I'm not gonna lie to you. I can look at actual statistics and say that, by the point if you hit, I think it's 25, more than half of people who pass that point without having sex don't lose their virginity before 40. And I just and that is mostly due to the lacking social skills to acquire to get into a relationship or some form of sexual relationship, even if it is just a one night stand. I think that I think the problem is that when it comes to a lot of these toxic attitudes that you're discussing with incels, and these more deep-rooted patriarchal attitudes about women's role in society and men's role in society, etc., etc., I just don't know if that is something that can be approached as individually. I think that is something that needs to be approached more wide and systemic, in a more wide and systemic sense. That when you hear comments from, I don't know, when we were talking about those gamer communities or far right communities that complain about women in media or something, right? I don't think you're ever going to be able to find some kind of program that sits every single one of those people down and educates them on feminism, right? We need something a bit wider than that, and I think we do need to consider approaching the culture war differently in that aspect. But I find that a lot of this ends up coming down to incels as this sort of specific group that, because they have this emotional problem, that we can sort of exploit it to sort of create more sort of left-wing sympathetic feminists. And I just don't know if that I find that exploiting the who are I do believe are very often quite desperate people to sort of build an ideology for sort of ideological purposes is not necessarily going to be helpful. And I think what we really need is because you can tell these guys, you can flood these guys with feminist with feminist literature. Most of them won't really fully internalize it, and I think it's because a lot of it doesn't really have the answers to why they why they have a shitty experience at the moment. You can say, oh, it's just because you are entitled, but then they don't feel entitled. They don't there are a good number of them that don't actually resent women. I have actually come across a good few of them, and especially some of the ones who are kind of young and don't really know about it. There are a good few of them who aren't directly resentful towards women themselves for it. They just have you ever heard of the subreddit Incels Without Hate?
No, I've not.
No, it was actually banned from Reddit because because it had the term incel in it. But it was a lot of guys who were like, look, I feel sad and I feel unattractive and lonely, and I don't think I'm ever going to have a relationship. But they didn't want to like inherently blame women for it, right? And it was still not something that was it didn't solve their problems. They were still miserable because they like. So I just don't know if like specifically going after the misogyny is really the problem here. I don't think that's the problem with like I think the misogyny is something like that's much wider and much in a much larger more systemic sense, and I think individualizing it to this sort of very small group of people won't solve much.
But like
I have heard some really horrifically misogynistic stuff from guys who are far from incels. They're never gonna. Yeah,
that's actually the point, though, isn't it? Because the patriarchal views, the sexism, the misogyny, all that stuff is what we're trying to get rid of, in society, trying to destroy, and that can come from, as you say, from people in relationships. That can come from the sort of more established, like traditional conservative families. That can come from anywhere. That is why we destroy it where it comes from. Yeah, so, that is also why, therefore, the incel groups, which they call themselves incels, they are acting. They're sort of for all all good as it is, sort of saying like, a lot of them don't actually hate women. I feel like that's a sort of misleading way of looking at it, because like it's not as though people are going to be black and white. Yeah, I hate women, or yeah, I don't hate women.
No, that's true. That's true.
You can't rely on someone's own opinion on that matter. You've got to sort of look at their actions and their views and their mindset. And someone can say, yeah, I like women, but then they'll still say and think lots of pretty negative things about relationships, or about how we're speaking to and thinking about women, and how we're sort of expecting a relationship at the end of things. And therefore, like, if there's someone who if there's someone who is, I'm trying to express this properly. There's someone who wants a relationship and they don't get one, and they're sad about it. But instead of thinking this is sad, but I'm gonna one day I'll have one. One day I'll meet someone, and still sort of progressing in a healthy way. Instead, they're sort of going into these insular communities. They're surrounding themselves with people who not only share like not very good views about women, but also are actively engineering their sort of social life to think in even worse ways about society, as we've said with those communities.
I think the problem is
that's born in a way that's born through catering like to this sort of mindset where you're calling yourself an incel. Even if you're not actively blaming women, you're still sort of acting sad that someone just isn't automatically sort of dating you, and you're calling yourself based on that.
Who says automatically here? Because I don't necessarily think that they aren't putting effort into being attractive and trying to be sociable, etc., etc.
Yeah, but you can't for all the effort you put in. Ultimately, another person has to it's their choice, isn't it? Like you can't just tick a few boxes and then be like, yeah, okay, right, someone's going to come now. And if they don't, then there's something wrong with society. Like ultimately, another person, even in a perfect utopia, another person still has to actively want the relationship for it to be a thing. Like you can't. That's why I feel as though it's a little bit.
I don't know. I don't know about that, because so let's take a group of 8 people, right? Let's take a group of 8 people. They're on a desert island, right?
Yeah.
And so now all those 8 people, one of those 8 people is they're just really, really not very good looking, right? And they just socially exclude that person because no, I'm using this as an example, right? Because it's like it is a caricature example, but it's more just to just explain a concept, right? But they have some aesthetic aspect about themselves that no one else likes. and that causes them to be treated more poorly by everyone else. Is it fair for them to suggest that that might be a problem with other people and society, and that group of 7, rather than themselves?
Okay, but in that situation, I like, yes, in that situation, sure, but that's not contingent to like actual society, is it? Because you're not stuck, like in real life, you aren't stuck with a very like select group of the same people. And like you said, they've got some aesthetic feature they don't like. Well, people look all sorts of different ways, and there's like, as I said earlier, like people, attraction is often based on, you know, what a person is like. Like in my view, nice, if you are a nice person and you have views which align with other people, and you do outwardly good things, the way you look is influenced by that. So like, for instance,
I
if
completely
you might
disagree
see,
with that.
like, if let's say, on the, like, let's say you saw someone walk past you in the street and you thought, wow, you know, they're quite pretty, they're quite attractive, and then the next time you saw them, they were on the news and it was their photo next to the headline, you know, woman eats babies and puts cats in bins and is now, you know, burning down orphanages. That person seems less attractive to you now,
Okay,
because you
yeah,
now have
actually,
seen, you've sort of learned a bit about them, and they're maybe not that nice. And it's the same thing in real life. Like, a person can have a double chin, huge nose, sunken in eyes, like things that you maybe don't think like aren't patriarchally, they're not things you've been engineered to find attractive. But if that person, let's say they're really nice and they're really funny and they make you smile and feel warm, that person might be attractive to you. And that's the same for anyone in society. Like, there's no one gold standard for what a person has to look like to be attractive. And the fact that some people think there are is not because there's some inherent logic to it. It's because there's, you know, still patriarchal standards. There's still expectancies of what a person should look like. And if we deconstruct these body standards and make a more body positive society, we can get people thinking that, yeah, you know, it doesn't matter that I don't have the right facial components to as like a model, say. I can still be seen as attractive based on how I act and the way I carry myself and the things
yeah.
I think. And the thing about incels is that rather than sort of have healthier views towards things, they're you know, predominantly thinking really misogynistic and really unhealthy attitudes, and it's those attitudes which are influencing the way people see them. So for all someone can say, like, yeah, I'm unattractive and women don't like me and all this, like, if they stopped and paused and thought about the things they were saying and thinking, they might find that actually, you know, they'd have more sort of forget, you know, relationships. Like, they'd have more friends, they'd have more people around them.
I don't really agree. I find that these toxic attitudes tend to be the result of failing to achieve those aspects. Like, that is effectively the unhealthy coping mechanism for not finding friends and not finding relationships, etc., etc. I find that if we I don't think that necessarily being nice and friendly is in any way a guarantee of making friends or finding relationships. I mean, I've got to be honest. I think in some aspects it's conforming to some of the toxic cultural standards that.
What is so?
I find that if you want to, I think you often like kill a lot of your social capital if you don't conform to some of the more toxic aspects of like modern socialization. Like, if you've got a group of friends that then, I don't know, they hate someone for some reason, if you just say, oh, I don't know, can we just like not care? Sometimes that can push you away from those friends.
Well, I'd actually argue that if you're, I mean, it depends on the context, obviously.
Yeah,
like,
no, but there's context, right? There's context, but the point is that, like, I don't necessarily think it's always a. Unfortunately, I don't think in the current social paradigm that the healthiest views are the ones that win out. I don't think that having like I don't think that the best person actually necessarily has the best experience.
But what do you mean by win?
As in find the happiest and healthiest relationships. I genuinely sometimes think that you can screw yourself over if you're just if you are a good person.
But what does that mean though? Like, that's not. I don't think that's a really like a tangible point, though, is it? Because like, what do you mean by being a good person?
Well, okay, so let's take. I'm trying to think of an actually decent example. So there are some people who respond poorly to not having certain patriarchal attitudes about relationships. So there's a certain. Have you heard of female dating strategy?
What? Sorry.
Female dating strategy. It's it's
female
sort of,
dating strategy.
Yeah. Okay. So it's basically red pill for women. That's kind of what this is. It's like men need to be like finance me, etc., etc. But it comes from a very common and it's not uncommon attitude that men need to earn more money than women to sort of be the protector provider. If you say as a man, actually no, I shouldn't have to do that, so I won't do it, and you, I don't know, don't choose a slightly more higher paying job, because it increases your chance of providing and it makes you more seem more attractive. It might actually end up being a worse cost benefit analysis.
But what does this? Okay, so the man says, "I don't have to be the highest earner."
Yeah. So you
fine.
just
then
have
date
a
people that don't like.
Well, yeah, date people who don't have that attitude. Do you know how small that dating pool is, mate?
I don't really particularly feel this is I don't particularly see this as continuing with what you were saying a second ago. Like, how is this?
Okay, so basically,
sometimes
sometimes what you have to do is conform to some toxic societal aspect of your person, and well, just internalize them and conform to them. Otherwise, if you just sort of throw your hands up and say, I don't care what society thinks about me, I'm just gonna be me, very often that ends up losing you friends, and you end up not actually socializing. You have to conform to other people's expectations of you.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, like, you've got to perform some social standards.
And some of those standards are going to end up being
But those
toxic.
standards are like the basic ones, like you got to wash and stuff. But like, there's no like you can be yourself and still find people who enjoy the things you enjoy. Like, there's millions of people in the country. There's going to be some people who enjoy the same things as you. And
I think it's very difficult to find those kinds of social social groups these days, especially.
Well, then, I mean, we live in the internet age. We're very lucky.
It's much harder because of the internet, as far as I'm concerned.
But then we can detoxify like the spaces which are saying to like these incel types, like, you gotta women are like being bad for you and stuff, and like women are causing you to be ill and not very happy. Like, we can get rid of that, and then you've got more space for, like, let's say someone. I'm trying to think of something now. Let's say someone's really into. Think of something like, what's that tabletop game called? What's the one with like the little figurines?
Warhammer.
Yes, that's it. Warhammer. They can go and find their Warhammer friends. Like, they. It's not as though like if someone's got like niche interests, or they're not coded in the same way that like they're not going to be on the front of like, I don't know, I'm trying to find the words for it. They're not going to have the coolest interest. Fine, whatever. Like, you're not in some TV show where like the big bully's going to come and be like, you playing with action figures and like smash them all up. You've got people in life you can go and speak to, and yeah, sure, some people aren't going to be interested, but they're not interested. Find people that are. Like, you can.
Yeah, I'm just suggesting that, like, for a lot of these types, they are struggling to find anything, so they might want to sort of just telling them to not ever care about social standards or conforming to those, including some of the more toxic patriarchal ones. I don't necessarily think is actually unhelpful. Like, okay, so I'm sure you've so here's one example that's maybe not like the it's not like inherently bad to do this, but it is one thing that I've noticed. So I'm sure you've probably been drunk on a night out and chatting up a girl. If you act more loud and boastful, that tends to get more interest, in my experience.
But then that's down to the person. That's not really.
In my experience, that is not down to the person. That is literally I've not met women that works on worse than just talking to them normally.
Okay, but what does that have to do with the overall like thing? Like,
the overall thing is that sometimes, yes, just being normal and nice and friendly is good, but sometimes you've got to also conform to that attitude of men need to be sort of strong and confident and
there's different ways of being strong. There's different ways of being strong and confident. And there's different ways of being nice. And I feel like these words, they can have different contexts, but the overall thing for anyone, like anyone can be in their own context, anyone can be a certain way. But as long as we're like, as long as we overall have a healthy attitude about relationships and have we reject the idea that like the incel ideology of like, you must be in a relationship, otherwise you are a failure. You must be doing this. You've got to have this. Like we should get rid of that. And then we'll find that, these situations aren't fine. Because, like, ultimately, like, people just want to live their lives. They want to have a nice time. Like, you've got to remember, the other side of this equation is a woman who probably just wants to, like, get on with her life. And if they want a relationship, then they have one. And if they don't,
I think women, women also want relationships. And I find that they also have...
There shouldn't be any expectation or pressure to... You have to have one because
no one's saying that. No one's saying, no one's suggesting in this situation that they should be like pressured into dating incels. That would be stupid. Obviously, that would be stupid and wrong. But I don't think
we can't say things like, sometimes people are nice and doesn't play up to the social standards, so therefore, we've got to unpack that. Like we've got to still keep in mind that the overall problem here, the main issue, is the view that these incel types have. Like their attitude is the issue here, and ultimately, as nice as it would be for everyone to just like meet their ideal partner, like you got to remember, every single person in society is an autonomous being, and they want to have their place. Like you can't create the ideal partner. You gotta have that patience. You gotta think, sometimes life's not just gonna present me with something, and you gotta ultimately accept that to a degree.
Okay. Here's another angle. Okay. So let's say this isn't like one of those more well-meaning incels that you can just sort of turn into a feminist. This is one of those toxic, selfish incels, and you tell him, actually, no, what you need to do is accept that it's not the end of the world that you don't have a relationship. And he says, okay, what do you offer me that patriarchy doesn't?
Well, that person, I feel, you got to be, it's going to sound a little bit harsh, but you've got to be a bit more direct, and you've got to say, well, actually, you're looking at this the wrong way. Like you can't, if you're thinking like, what are you going to offer me with all these Ds, then you're going to sort of be on a bit of a hiding to nothing, because you've got lots of things you've got to unpack, and ultimately, it's a place of a therapist and a place of a mental health team to say to that person, well, there's some things here which you've got to work on, because that person ultimately, like as lovely as it would be to present the perfect antidote to have their sort of themselves fixed up and like a better person. Someone with those views is actively harmful to people in society.
They're actively harmful to others, right?
Exactly.
But then you've got to give them. Yeah, but you've got But in this situation, they have no incentive to stop being actively harmful, because as we've both agreed, that generally relationships will improve someone's life. They don't always. And sometimes they make it, they will. Sometimes they make it worse, but sort of on sort of like an average, like mean basis, they tend to be an improvement to people's lives. And at least from his perspective, you are telling him, no, I'm not going to solve I'm not going to help you with your with the goal that you have. I'm going to tell you that the goal that you have is a toxic one to want. And then you've got the right-wing sort of trad side of the world saying, oh yeah, we're actually going to just solve your problem.
But, okay, so...
we're going to make your life better, while we're saying, actually, no, you should just accept it as it is.
Well, there's two things to consider, though. So firstly, you'd... obviously, like, were I the therapist to be opposite this person, I'm not just going to say, yeah, you're wrong. Like, I'm going to word it slightly better than that. But
yeah, fair enough.
We're still going to... The overall point is that if they have a harmful view, it's that therapist's job is ultimately to tell them that, yeah, we've got a few things we've got to work on. And yeah, it's not going to be nice for them to hear that. But ultimately, like, they have to
But
at some point,
generally, actually, a
they have to
therapist
at
is
some
more
point
to
recognize that they've
improve.
got. Sorry, we're speaking at the same
Oh,
time.
sorry, yeah.
You
A
go ahead.
therapist's general job is to actually improve the mental health of that individual person. Normally,
Yes,
it's
but
not more an activist therapist that would actively make someone their client's life worse or their client's mental health worse for the sake of other people. They can't do that. That's like
okay,
not
but the
something they're allowed to
counselor
do.
or the therapist, they can still identify a problem in someone's life. It's like, let's say, for instance, someone is drinking every single night, every night, all week, and they're just haggard all the time, and they smell of alcohol. That therapist can say to them, there's a clear problem in your life, and ultimately we need to talk about how we're going to move on from this drink, and they can recommend rehab, and they can get group sessions so they can talk about their problems, but they can ultimately address the issue that someone is addicted to alcohol. From the same way, in the same way, even a therapist could say to this person who, let's say, believes they're entitled to a girlfriend and thinks that women should be just actively seeking out men like him, and that it's a problem with society that he's not got these relationships. They can say to them, well, actually, we've got to unpack a few of these things because these negative ideas are contributing to your unhappiness. And as for the right-wing people saying, yeah, we're going to fix that, it's actually not you, it's it's women, it's society's degradation, it's
I
black
don't know. We
people.
need to return to traditional.
Yeah,
Kind of
those
that.
people, you deplatform them, you get rid of them, like you scrub them from YouTube and all the major sites, and you'll find that once you do that, once you take away these like little pockets of space where like toxic ideas just brew, they'll be discontented, these incels, but eventually they'll find their ways to the people that are going to actually listen to them.
I
And
don't
sure,
agree.
so
I don't agree. I think that this will over time. I think that we have been trying to do that, and we have been trying and trying and trying, and the incel sphere has only gotten larger.
but do
Even
you
though
think
we have been deplatforming right wingers, we have been opposing these groups for as long as we have. We have been trying to improve mental health services. We have been trying to educate people on patriarchy, but none of it has actually been adequate. So what do we just do these things? Do we just hope that we do these things more, and
do
that will
you
just
think
solve
though?
the problem?
Do you think it's gone far enough? Do you feel as though, for instance, we've tried to improve mental health services, but we live in a society run by right-wing people who have no interest in funding these services adequately, actively trying to privatize most of these services? So, well, we're both in the UK, so the NHS is being destroyed.
I'm not going to disagree that that's been a
Yeah.
complete and utter disaster.
And
Actually,
then
in my area,
with the
they have just they have recently opened up some drop-in mental health services. So that there is a somewhat of an increase.
yeah, but like my point is, my approach would be like, obviously I'm not saying that things are fine how they are now by any means. Like, I mean, obviously not. I'm a socialist. I don't want the system we have as a whole. But it's to say like we've been trying, it's not gone far enough. Of course, it hasn't gone far enough because we've got a whole system to change, and then on top of that, the platforms where these like really right wing, like far right types are, so YouTube, Twitter to a degree, but mainly Reddit. Facebook's another one. I can't think of the other ones now. Like all those places, they don't do anywhere near enough moderation. You can right now, I could type in on any of these like platforms. I don't know, like Red Pill or Date Tips, Red Pill. I don't know. I don't go looking for these things. But you can imagine, I could very easily find the places where these types congregate quite easily. And were I of that mindset, I could easily be sucked into hours and hours of just really awful bile, just all the time, where to the point where my whole recommendations would be filled with their like trash. You'd hear nothing, like you wouldn't go to any other news source but like the worst, like Breitbart, all those types, just all these really rancid opinions. And so that is a huge part of what's stopping these people actually getting any other source of input, because they're like where we would hear like, yeah, maybe we should challenge that view. They hear, this doctor's a fraud because they're not helping you get a girlfriend. This person's just a leftist. They're trying to indoctrinate you into whatever buzzword we've adopted this week. Like, so there's a huge circular problem with like these internet spaces. and as a consequence, they need to you got to address those too. So it's a double-ended sword. Even you stop the far right types, and you make the mental health services better, and you do both of those things by adopting a radical, sort of left-wing approach. You deconstruct the capitalist system, and obviously, I'm not saying that's going to happen like this, but I'm a pragmatist. Any left-wing action is good if it's deconstructing a right-wing process, and you also take like an almost anti-fascist approach to like internet stuff by scorching the platforms of these far-right fascist incel types.
The only thing is that
I'm still here. I'm still listening.
Sorry. The only thing I think about approaching these types differently is because that they are defined by a social circumstance, while sort of fascists are defined specifically by ideology. And I think that does require a slightly higher level of looking around of looking at that of that circumstance. And I don't think that you can just I'm just 100% honest. I don't think that if you I don't think that you can deconstruct the desire to have relationships.
I think you can. I think that it sounds a bit blunt just saying that. I think that this desire for a lot of people is rooted in what society's expectation of a man should be, and that expectation is born from the patriarchal. Men provide for their family, men produce for society, and that view it's a link of the capitalist idea that your worth is defined by your labor, and if you're not pouring hours into the system, then you're worthless, and that's literally reinforced by the fact that if you don't do that, then you're not going to get food or a house or a life. So that's one side of it, and the other side is we live in a society that's been influenced by patriarchal views, and men's own mental health and their own well-being has been massively degraded by these things. And so of course
you're starting to sound like a MGTOW here.
Sorry?
You're starting to sound like a MGTOW.
Well, because patriarchal views, they affect everyone. They affect everyone in society: men, women, non-binary people. Everyone is affected by these things.
Yeah, no, I'm just suggesting. And the reason I said that you're sounding like a MGTOW when it comes to men shouldn't just this is about men's like expectation to be providers, and we just shouldn't push them into that. Is because So I don't know how familiar you are with where I started online, but I actually did at one point get some. I did become somewhat adjacent to the MGTOW community, and I did hear some of these attitudes from them. But the reaction from sort of contemporary society at the time, and still to this day, is that throwing away of sex and relationships is viewed with a significant amount of ridicule. Like, oh, okay, I just don't need these things. I don't ask for or need these things, because they are. I don't know. Most of them had more self-protection attitudes around it. That things like I don't know, like false rape accusations or whatever, or they don't want to get they don't want to risk divorce or something, right? So they don't want to get married. And obviously, you can argue that those motivations are potentially toxic. But one of the comments that I would see about those types was, actually, they're just coping because they can't get any. And that's not from... and that attitude is kind of the problem, in the sense that you can't... you can try and therapist these guys into not thinking that they are not defined by that their worth isn't defined as how much they put into a relationship, but they're going to be defined that way by a lot of other people.
But how, again, the main how some people react to misogynists is not as it's not the priority when the misogyny is the issue in the first place, if that makes sense.
No, but what I mean is that every time they try and deconstruct that misogyny, deconstruct the attitudes that you think lead to the misogyny, in the sense of desire for relationships, and not judging themselves by that. Every time they do like actually start advocating this, don't judge me by that. It's that wider society tends to be the thing pushing back against them.
But with MGTOW,
Yeah, and I understand with MGTOW there is that
like
sort
from
of
memory, lots of them were just openly misogynistic.
Yeah, they were. A lot of them
really
were
backwards
right?
views. So like the angle they're coming from is always going to be quite bad because they've not really considered like what they're saying. They've just sort of attached misogyny to like a barely cogent idea and just ran with it. When someone says like, yeah, like someone when I say these people shouldn't be like an incel shouldn't be just purely set up to think, yeah, I've got to have a relationship, otherwise I'm gonna fall apart. Like they don't before they can start thinking about I want this, I want that, they've got to like whether or not they want to, whether it's going to be immediately happy for them, whether it's going to fulfill their immediate desire, they have to unpack and analyze their core issue, their core like misogyny.
I don't agree, because I think a lot of the misogyny comes from their very like I said again, and I think we're starting to talk in circles here, because I think I've said this before. I think it's that a lot of the misogyny comes from a lack of experience.
But that
with
doesn't
the real world.
Like it almost like it sounds a bit harsh again, but that doesn't.
What I mean is, I think that they have they tend to have a very low like their low opinions, their crappy opinions tend to come from this sort of maladjusted lack of social cohesion, and I think it's hard to pull someone into that without them experiencing a lot of this stuff firsthand.
But plenty of people are maladjusted and don't go down this path. Plenty of people have like depression and stuff and don't end up in these spaces.
They don't end up in these spaces, but most of them will have will internalize these attitudes to some extent. Right?
But the fact that they
won't call themselves incels, but they will have some idea that they don't like that they are less of a person, or at least that it's shameful for them to have less to not have relationships or something.
Well, exactly. So if not everyone who has these issues go down the incel path, why do we need to cater to the incel?
But they don't go specifically like we said. It's not like an incel not incel kind of thing. It's more of a sliding scale. Right?
But I don't think it's even that, though, because there's plenty of people who've had really rubbish like social lives, and plenty of people who've had really bad experiences, and who they don't have sex, or they don't have relationships, or they're just maybe feeling really down about themselves, but they don't go into this horrible little subsection where they're actively blaming women and holding really misogynistic views and being courted by these date con artists and fascists and stuff.
Okay, so we're talking about but we're talking about extents here, aren't we?
Talking about what, sorry?
Extent. So it doesn't mean that none of them internalize patriarchal attitudes about society.
Of course, but someone who is down on their luck and they're not having much relationships and stuff, and they're not having a nice time, that can also recognize that actually there's no like conspiracy made by women to not date them, but there's like a wider problem, or even if they're not seeing that but just aren't internalizing their misogyny, that is a person it's warranting our sort of time, and sort of like that's a person which you've got a lot more. They've not done anything wrong necessarily, they've just had a bit of rotten luck, whereas there's a difference between them and like say some incel which is in the same situation, but instead of thinking like broadly, they're just attaching their own woes to like conspiracies about women and stuff and all these other not very nice views, and that person ultimately has a harmful view which has to be challenged. And I'm not saying they need to be like hung, drawn, and quartered and like ridden through the town and be like, yeah, this person's bad, let's sort them out.
No, but I'm suggesting that the way to offer them this kind of like deconstructivist attitude is to not come in with, yeah, you don't actually need a relationship, because as far as I'm concerned, that is going to turn them away.
But like,
I genuinely don't think that that's ever going to pull any of them in. I think that's going to scare them off.
But you don't need to. You're not going to hand out a brochure saying you don't need a relationship. Come and get therapy. Like,
yeah, no, I understand
at the same time,
that, but I think even when it comes to like in a therapy session, I as far as I have heard, like from like the incel spaces that I did interact with, is that they seem to feel that was just a confirmation of the black pill. That, okay, people just don't think that they are worthy of relationships, so they're just like trying to set them up to fail. And I think that's part of the problem, is it does come off like that way, even if it's not intended that way. Like, yeah, okay, theoretically it's not the end of the world that they don't have a relationship, but it does feel like it to them. And while they're still in that emotionally vulnerable state, I don't think it is a healthy attitude to start trying to like sell them on.
But that feeling is ultimately it's a false one, isn't it? Like, they feel they are worthless because they don't have a relationship. They feel like they're trapped in that. But that's one that has been, cultivated by the people they're surrounding themselves with all the time. And, it's one which, because of the societal like background we have of patriarchy, of course it's gonna like be in the back of your mind, in the same way that people, like body positivity, that's important because people might feel about their bodies that they're not attractive because of some social convention or standard, like fat people feeling that they're ugly because they've got a bit more fat around their face or around their belly.
Yeah, and it's not just like, that; it's also that other people will then judge them poorly because but build that feeling, social standard, right?
Yes, but that feeling, while yes, there are people that feel they are ugly because they are fat. Like, that's not some inherent truth about society. That's something that's been constructed by the society we live in. Like, it's a thought which we can unpack, and we can together as a society come to move away from. And so similarly, we can move away from the sexist ideas, which, because at core they are ultimately really backwards ideas that incels have. And even if they say that, I don't really hate women, I just want a girlfriend. Ultimately, these ideas they have are rooted in the hegemonies and the patriarchal ideas that are, at the core of what their sadness is about. If we move on from that, then we can get to a better place. And it's going to be sad for some of these people to hear that, I'm sorry, but you're not going to just have a relationship straight away.
Well,
but that's part of.
Well, okay, but there's you're not going to have a relationship straight away. It's very different to, let's work on your desire for one. Let's like just try and like make you re-examine it so that you don't want one anymore. But
there's also the fact that do you think some of these people are in the right place to be having relationships? Like, some of these people who, like, I get that they want one, and I get that that's their desire, but
I do think a lot of them need to probably be improved on their mental and emotional health.
Exactly, because it would be awful to subject someone else to like some of the views about women that these people have.
But I do think I do think like originally you do need that. You do need some of that foundational aspect, but I think that giving them the options for sex and relationships is going to be part of their path to like fully healing.
But a therapist can't give them the options because they aren't.
I know they can't. No, but but if you can, like, there are certain forms of therapy where you can build, where you can put someone into social settings and you could find them like friends and stuff.
Yes, but that isn't, like, you can help them improve their social skills and you can give them things, but you can't ultimately, like, the whole point is that the incel like ideology is fundamentally just a poor one to form your basis of society with. Like, there's no, like, you can't tell someone that there's a relationship waiting for them, because that might not happen. So you've got to unpack all that stuff.
Of course, like I said, you shouldn't ever guarantee these things. But I think that it's you can say, okay, well, we can try and help you, right? We can try and help you improve your life. Because if you feel like this now, I don't think it's just pathologizing that like they've just got to learn to be more okay with their current situation.
But in a way, they kind of do, because like they can't. you can give someone all the tips in the world, but ultimately another person has to make their own choice. And if they choose not to, that's their decision. Like you can't force someone to, you can't condition someone into like just believing, oh, this person, they deserve a chance. Like, and that person that let's say there's an ex-incel who's
Okay,
gone
yeah,
through
yeah, you
therapy
can't.
and there's a better person. If they're in a healthier place of mind, they will think, sure, this person, they weren't interested, but one day they might be. And even if there's
Yeah,
not,
but
even like they're going to be in a happier place because they've got a healthier view of the world. They've got a healthier understanding of how people work.
um,
Through deconstructing the sort of sexist stuff they were, um, in the first place.
I I think the problem is that the is that it is so attached to their insecurities, and the insecurities are pretty much like impossible to get rid of without sort of like almost sort of social like proving them wrong emotionally.
Well, again, a lot of their issues, there's wider societal stuff. So like, I'm not saying they just go to therapy and that's it. You also start deconstructing the stuff in society. So the patriarchal ideas, body standards, sexist, sexist ideas about dating, all those sorts of things. You unpack it, all of it, and deconstructing capitalism too, because that is also part of
Yeah,
it.
yeah, no, I agree with this aspect.
Like you've got to take all
Yeah,
the
we need
approaches.
to we need to improve the system entirely.
Yeah, but then part of that is also putting a bullet in incel ideology. So,
Yeah, no, no,
like,
of course, yeah, but I think that a lot of that would disappear naturally if we took away a lot of the sort of like hang-on aspects of patriarchy that already exist in society. To some extent, I find that incel ideology is almost to some extent a very toxic reaction to having to live in this sort of transitional stage of
but
patriarchy.
I wouldn't say that's accurate because plenty of people are reeling from the negative effects of the society we live in, but aren't believing the the incel stuff. So
Yeah,
I wouldn't.
yeah,
Yeah,
no,
you.
but I think the yeah, but the aspects of the I think we're conflating two aspects. When it comes to you need a relationship to you probably need a relationship to like reach an acceptable standard of living that you would be content with. Is something that the vast majority of people believe. Not just incels. Even yeah, you can say it's and there's a very big difference between it's not the end of the world and like okay, it's not the end of the world, but there is also you should just be okay with where you're at. I don't know if that is something that we should be telling them.
In
Because
terms of
I think that is an unhealthy attitude to give to people who are already in not healthy states of mind.
if you're in if you're in an unhealthy state of mind, like incels are, you need to. It's like it's a
I mean,
buzzword to say, oh, this is cancer, this is cancerous. But I actually think it's sort of a quite a literal cancer because the incel like mindset of like thinking women are just these. You either date them or they're not in your life. You either win them over or they're nothing. That's corrosive
well,
to a healthy mind.
I don't necessarily think every incel believes that though.
Oh,
I know,
but enough of them do
yeah,
to the
yeah,
point
enough
that
of them do. But like I said, that I mean, again, that's a completely different attitude toward compared to feeling the need to have a relationship, and like that's where I draw the line. I feel that is a perfectly healthy. I think that is genuinely a healthy and perfectly understandable desire and like it's understandable to need that, to feel the need for that.
to want one, sure.
Uh,
To really strongly want one, absolutely, that's fine. Everyone wants certain things in life. If you want one, that's absolutely fine. But to absolutely need one, like some of these incels seem to think is life and death to them. Like from the perspective they're coming from, just really like ignores on a fundamental level the autonomy of the other person.
no,
Because
no, I don't think it does. I think you can need something from another person that they don't have to provide for you, and
then
still
how
need
can
it.
you need it then? Because like if
Yeah,
you You need food.
Sometimes two people's needs, like sometimes one person's needs can come at the cost of another person's autonomy, and that person does not necessarily. Okay, but that person, it could be at odds with someone's autonomy, but it doesn't necessarily mean that person should be coerced to provide that need.
But
Right?
you can't fulfill someone's need if it breaches on someone else's autonomy, but can you? Yeah, not in this context anyway. Like, so for instance, food. You know, it's society should provide food for everyone.
Yeah,
Water,
but you have
shelter.
to you have to provide that food, right? So someone has to do it,
Well,
right?
yes, but that's society's role as a whole. Everyone contributes in their own way to doing that, be it like in a society. So the people who, farmers that provide the food from the farm, truck driver that drives it to the shop, shopkeeper that sells it in the store.
I don't think
Obviously,
anything.
like I think
I
the
don't think anything.
anti-capitalist point.
I don't think
Sorry,
anything I produce, or anything I do, like on a daily basis, contributes to farming.
you're a student, aren't you, David?
I'm an engineering student. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the things you do will ultimately contribute towards mechanisms and systems which ultimately work with that.
Yeah, in a very, very, very like potentially sort of stochastic sense, but
Well,
I don't necessarily.
all the pieces matter, don't they? Like ultimately, every part of society is, through a few degrees of separation, connected to each other. So, like, let's say your engineering takes you to building bridges. Say,
Yeah, but I
like,
don't necessarily think that's what like determines your like right to food or like I don't think that the fact that you contribute to society is the
of
reason
course,
that food is a need, right?
of course,
That
but
like I need food because I'm a human being that has like that has like an energy. I'm an organism that
of
produces, that
course, but what I
respires and
was,
produces energy, right?
of
And
course,
requires like so.
but what I was saying was that the food, like it doesn't infringe on someone else's autonomy because everyone is contributing to that. Like everyone in society contributes to each other's role in society, and therefore you're not like, it's not like me eating my food is gonna act like infringe on someone else's life, like
Yeah, but
unless I've,
okay, but if you
whereas
couldn't
with
afford
a,
food, if you couldn't afford food, and you wanted someone else's, the I know Vosh has made this example. Like, okay, we're on a desert island, and I've got all and I've managed to sequester all the food before you've woken up. So now it is my autonomy to provide you with said food. I've
but
locked it up somewhere, so I've got to take. I've got it in my. I've got the key in my pocket. I will have to physically put my hand in my pocket to take the key out.
okay, but that's
Um,
not, but
no,
that I don't think that's quite
yeah,
analogous to what we were saying a second ago, like
yeah,
the
no. But the point is that I don't think just because um like in a certain situation, providing a need would require coercion. Let's say you're in a I don't know, you're in a room and someone starts having a like stops breathing properly, right?
Mhm.
They need help, but you don't have a legal right. You don't have a legal obligation to provide it.
Okay, but that's not the same thing as what we're saying with this one, is it? Because that, like, the moral thing to do there is to either give them if they're like, what, are they having a seizure? Are they choking? Like, what's, are they just,
Okay, so it's more that, but the reason it's in that situation, right? It is still a need. Like, let's say it's not something illegal. It's not illegal to like say no, and no one can force you to do it. But it's still something that they need, right? And it does come at the it would come at the it would come at odds with your autonomy. It would
okay, but
require you to help them, right?
in, in that situation though, yeah, you, if you couldn't help them yourself, you would get someone who could help them. Like you'd beckon for someone, or you'd call an emergency line. But we're straying from the point a little bit, which is that we're like, food is a human right. Everyone needs to have food. Shelter, human right again. And the things which in society deny as those things are things we can analyze through an anti-capitalist lens. We can say that the capitalist class, they possess the means to which we have food, and they use it for their own profit. And this is a flawed and harmful way of running a society, because it ultimately means that people are being harmed by a select few desire for capitalism, for profits, at the expense of the people who actually produce the food and the land and the materials in the first place. We can ultimately see that food, shelter, education, all those things are necessary. They're human rights. But a relationship, that's not something which, you obviously it's nice, but you are not going to keel over dead because you not have a girlfriend.
Yeah,
you're
but
not going
again,
to
like
die.
in the same sense. Okay, let's take another example that might be more serious. It's not 100% analogous, but okay. Is it fair to consider a child's need to have a parent that cares about them? No, but you can't force a parent to care about their child. But I think you can't force them to. That parent has no legal obligation. They can give up the child to another household. And there is no guarantee for that. There is no guarantee for anyone to ever grow up with a parental figure that cares about them. But it doesn't mean that it's not. It can't be considered an emotional need, and it can't be considered a need for most people to live a happy and healthy life.
Okay, but a child needs that support to grow and mature into an adult. Whereas an adult should be capable of realizing that a relationship is something that requires another person's consent and participation in that, and should
I'm just trying to. I still don't seem to understand why the fact that it does require someone else's consent doesn't mean that means you can't force other people to do it. It doesn't mean that it's not something that you might need for a healthy quality of life.
But you can desire it, you can really want it, and you can feel better. You can feel better about yourself when you're in one. But you don't a healthy if you're single, it's not like you're gonna be worse off. You're not gonna die. You might want one, but it's not as though it's the end of the world. It's not a need, is it? You can still these incel types. A lot of them, they've been told that their worthiness is entirely based around this, and they're worthless unless they find a girlfriend. And if they don't have a girlfriend, they should just do what Elliot Rodger did and just kill women because they're letting everyone down, or some other convoluted garbage. And what that ultimately is doing is reinforcing patriarchal ideas about men's and women's roles in society. And so if we if we get rid of all that, if we unpack all of that and say to someone, your place in society is not determinant on whether or not you have a relationship. You can do what you like, have your own life, have freedom to do as you please. And if you get a relationship, that's great. And if you want to have a relationship, that's brilliant too. But if you don't have a relationship and you want one, ultimately be content with you can try and aspire to have one.
Yeah,
but you can still be content with what you've got.
Okay, so I actually tried that. When I was younger, I tried the be content attitude. Didn't work out very well. It made me more miserable. It was only when I started trying and I actually started getting involved in relationships and dating that my mental health started to improve. So
right.
I feel that in this situation that relationships are in that sense an emotional need. I think that it does. I think that it does provide something, and I do think it is fair to for a lot of people that they genuinely would not consider life worth living if they don't have those aspects.
But don't you think that's really not a healthy way? So let's say this person who won't consider life worth living if they're not in a relationship finds a relationship, and they tell their girlfriend, I just wouldn't see life as worth living if you weren't in my life.
No, but he's not. Yeah, but he's not saying he's not saying if you weren't in my life. It's that if he never found a relationship ever again after they broke up.
Yeah, but the implied
that would be a problem, and I can understand most people probably would, if you told them that, not genuinely consider it, genuinely consider that. Yeah, they might not be happy, And I know a good number of people who've like gotten into their sort of like older years without having relationships, and they have continually told themselves that yeah, they're happy without it, but they're not happy. And it's not because they're like, you can deconstruct this as much as you like, but I don't think that you can deconstruct the sort of like actual emotions and physiological responses that people have to these things.
But there's a difference between, you know, being upset and depressed and even suicidal over losing a person in your life that you've already established in your life, and saying to someone, you know, I won't consider it worth living if I've not got a girlfriend. Like they're two different things.
No, I don't
And
know,
so, like,
because I mean, as cold and unforgiving as society can be, without that like emotional support from like intimate relationships, I can actually genuinely see it being like more bad than good for a lot of people.
well, yeah, intimacy is great, and you know, you've got a society where there's more a healthier attitude about it. That's good. That's what we want to have. But ultimately, like, even in this healthy society, if people don't, you know, if like there's someone who let's just say a few people who try and date don't want to date them, like, that's just life.
Yeah,
and
but
they
yeah,
and a healthy person,
There's
healthy
a point.
person says, like, you know, yeah, sure, these people didn't want to date me, but my life isn't worthless because these people didn't want to date me.
Yeah, but there's a difference between
Like,
these individual people don't. This individual person doesn't want to date me, and my life's not worthless because of them. I feel that most individual people's like toxicity tends to relate to like a specific person, and getting hung up on an individual person. Like an entitlement to an individual person's like autonomy is a problem. But I do think that I don't think having a more general understanding that like certain things are just not going to be healthy to maintain for long term, such as lacking relationships. I think that is genuinely important. Like I don't think we should just deny that and try and deconstruct it and pathologize the fact that people are just not as social animals. There are certain aspects of our socialization that are important for us to maintain for a happy and healthy life.
well, social animals, yeah, of course, but that's not equivalent to, you know, unhappy if not in a relationship, or lacking a fundamental need if not in a relationship.
Yeah, no,
Like,
I never said not in a relationship. Never having had one is very different to not being currently in one.
but you know, even then, like it's again, it sounds cruel, but ultimately, like, even if someone went 100 years without having one, like, you can't. It's not like you could say, "Oh, you're 90 years old now. You may as well just give him one." Right? Come on, someone come over. You got to be his girlfriend now. Like,
Well,
that wouldn't be a
no,
fair thing
but
to say.
again, I never said
And
that.
I
I
know,
think
of course,
no,
and I'm
yeah,
not saying you
yeah.
did say
I
that.
think the problem.
But
I think the problem is that I can separate the concept of an emotional need for, okay, I'm going to personally need this to live a happy and healthy life, from someone else needs to solve that, right? That yeah, there is going to be a situation where like your needs might not be met by society. But I do think that in society we do need to acknowledge that yet these things can be considered emotional needs, and that we should at least try without coercion, because coercion, not being coerced into relationships with other people is also a need.
yeah, like, freedom from, you know, coercion and
Freedom
abuse
of
and stuff.
association. Yeah, freedom of association. It is also a need. So I'm not again. I think that I think that the problem is that like I know that there's the incel state mandated girlfriend thing. Yeah, but that's not what I'm at. That's not what I'm arguing for. But I'm arguing that that just as most individual people, trying to convince them not to pursue relationships, or just to be content with not having one, isn't as productive as I just don't think it's actually particularly productive.
It's I think
it's unhealthy in some other aspects. That's all.
I just think, and as much as it's interesting to conversate about
Yeah,
this, it is
we've
should
gone on
probably
too long. We've gone on
steer
way
to
too long.
we could steer towards a conclusion of sorts. I think as
And I've
um,
completely ignored the entire chat.
oh, it's I noticed it was ticking along, but
Yeah,
it's for
I
you not
have
to know.
not even been I have not even been looking at it the entire
Um,
night. I feel so bad. I apologize to everyone in chat who's been watching. I have not paid any attention to you, and I'm very sorry for that.
but you know, like as at a core, like from the incel perspective, where you're not in a healthy position, you're holding all these misogynistic views. I think the ultimate thing is that if you're a woman in society, you shouldn't have to put up with people who are harboring such negative opinions and stuff. And naturally, the people who come out of this incel sort of this ideology, they can't. It's not like if they're not just coming out of it because they're like you don't want to have them thinking, "Oh, I'm not an incel anymore. I'm going to get a girlfriend now," because that is sort of still part of the problem. They need to be coming out of it thinking, "Yeah, actually, I held some pretty negative opinions about things. I didn't really think about things in a healthy way. I had quite a few sexist ideas, and therefore change their attitude to thinking, well, maybe I don't have a girlfriend, maybe I'm not in a relationship, but I can live with that. I can think about things healthier and make myself have slightly healthier opinions about things, and then maybe one day things will happen. Because
Yeah, I think the problem is that I don't think living the idea of living with that is necessary to living with being lonely is necessarily something that is required to not like be misogynistic and patriarchal. Like I said, I don't think that this is that the concept of relationships as sort of like as sort of like prerequisites to a happy and healthy life for most people. Like it's not for every single person, but for most people is like I don't think that's a toxic attitude to have.
what is inside?
I don't think seeing having some experience with relationships as a prerequisite for a happy and healthy life is necessarily it's not like the secret to a happy and healthy life, but just a prerequisite. I don't necessarily think that that's inherently evil. I don't think that's inherently like patriarchal or inherently wrong, and I think that is something that can arguably be unhealthy if you try and deconstruct it.
Well, I mean, I just feel if you've had one, you've had one. If you haven't, you haven't. And ultimately, incels would, at the end of some hypothetical therapy they've gone down, can come out of it thinking, yeah, maybe I've not had these relationships, but I'm here now. I'm a person now, and I've got to live for today. And for however bad they felt in the past, they've got it. So if they've ditched if they've been helped to abandon these negative views, perhaps they can see things in a healthier light, and therefore, have healthier views as part of a healthy society, and therefore naturally be more appealing as people to end up in relationships if that's what we want. And if they don't end up in them, then that's fine too, because ultimately there's no guarantees in life. Like you're never going to know whether you have them or not.
That's the problem. I don't necessarily think that like on an individual case that saying that's fine too is okay. Just because some people do die young doesn't necessarily mean that we shouldn't ever put effort into finding like preventing that from happening. And I just don't think that like throwing our hands up and suggesting that and just being like super high super sort of libertine about society and relationships is necessarily the direction to go in. But I guess we're going to continue to talk in circles about this if we don't stop it soon.
No, indeed. Yeah.
So I think that those are relatively okay closing statements. Let's just go. So I will probably stick Owen's like social media stuff in the description. I'm sure you'll download and put this stream up on your channel or wherever you want to put it. Up to you.
Yeah.
Do what you like with it. I don't care. And yeah.
Well, no. Thank you for talking, David, and thank you for.
I think we had a
having me on
healthy
the
chat.
channel.
I think we had a healthy chat.
I
Even
hope
if we
so.
don't, we don't
I hope,
fully agree on everything, but that's fine.
I hope ultimately though that people, if there's anything to take from this, that I'll try and be brief. The incel stuff, just not a healthy place to be. So if there is anyone who is watching who is of that mindset, like get help, get yourself out. The sooner you get yourself out, the better. Yeah.
Yeah, I would also say that just try and find someone to help out. And I know that can be hard. And I would just try whatever to get to find like social bonds that can over time improve your life. Because and I will say that most of the toxic attitudes will die out naturally the more people you interact with. The black pill is impossible to maintain mentally if you just meet real people. Okay. Oh, shit. I think I had to end the call? Did I have to end the call? Oh, no. No, I did end the call. I was doing it through OBS. I'm so stupid. I haven't done a live stream in like 2 years, so... See ya.